everyone, welcome back to the Nintendo Prime Podcast Season 2, Episode 31. We got a 4-pack with us today. It's going to be a fun little show. First thing we're going to do is get into our introductions and what have we been playing lately. Like usual, look at this. We have a fancy little banner. What have we been playing lately? What is going on? Starting right next to me, mirroring my TV, Eric. How you doing, buddy? What have you been playing lately? And welcome back.
Yeah, I know, right?
You're muted for starters.
Oh, cool.
Let's start there.
That's
First off, how you doing?
Good. Holy Christ!
Come on, Eric.
Yeah, because
Crank your volume.
Yeah, right. Because my set. No, I'm good. I don't know what day it is right now. I had a 7-hour phone call at work today straight, so I'm a little fried. But playing some Tears of the Kingdom still. Just running around shrine hunting right now for just a little bit. Yeah, that's pretty much it.
Do all the shrines.
Yeah.
There's something special at the end.
Yeah.
Golden
piece of poo. Wait.
Wait. It's better than that.
Wait.
It's better than that. All right, directly below me, we have Mr. Andres Restart here. How's it going and what have you been playing lately?
Hello. I am doing okay. And I have been playing Pikmin 4 lately, and it's pretty good.
Pretty good. I saw your little video. Is it better than Tears of the Kingdom? Who would even ask that question?
Apparently me. I don't actually
fan.
think it is, but that was the question because I noticed a lot of people do.
There are quite a few that do, actually.
Yeah.
Pikmin 4 is a good game. It's
Yeah.
very different. If you prefer it, cool.
The response to that video is definitely a good example of people that make assumptions based off a title.
Happens all the time.
Yeah. But yeah, we pose a question, we talk about it, and I think it's a valid conversation because maybe for whatever reason, Tears of the Kingdom didn't impress you as much as you thought it would. Maybe you wanted to be set in a different world. Maybe you just had really high expectations. Maybe you didn't enjoy the story. And those are a lot of common criticisms that people have had about the game. Not everyone. And if you're one of those people and you vibe with Pikmin 4, maybe you might like Pikmin 4 more. So that's what we talk about.
Right.
Yeah. Both are really good games.
Yes, they are. Coming back. It's been, I don't know, it's been a month. Maybe it's been 2 months at this point. I have no idea, but now I can get a hold of you better. So we don't have to.
That's right.
You don't have to take forever to figure it out. We got Sunbro Nation back. How's it going, man? What have you been playing lately? And before you answer that question, I've been wondering for a while, is that a 49-inch ultra wide monitor behind you?
It sure is, but it's not as fancy as yours, Nate. It's like the OG model 1080p resolution, so we're talking lower res, and now they have an OLED one of these. So,
yeah, you know what? Don't even get, because I had the OG model.
Yeah.
It broke. I tried to get it covered under warranty. They don't make the parts for it anymore, just to warn you. So what they'll do is they'll give you credit on a full refund that I ended up putting towards the new model. And of course, and by the way, when I got the new model, the 1440p one, it's all great, it's all cool. And now they're selling, it's OLED now. I'm like, are you?
Yeah.
What
this is one of those monitors I'm going to sit out on for a few generations before I ever consider getting another one to see where it's at in like 4 or 5 years, because it's an investment. Sadly, speaking of problems, this one is doing a thing where when I first turn it on, half the monitor is just straight lines through it. So, but Flexi Spot did a sponsor for the standing desk, which was very cool, and I'm a big fan of that, and so I hooked it up in my background now as opposed to it was always right here. But anyway, I'm editing.
I feel that might be a better use of mine. It just sits off ominously.
Well, and to be totally honest too, I wasn't ever using it for gaming or entertainment, just only research, and I used to use it for editing, and now I'm using a 48-inch OLED monitor, which just because it's OLED looks so much better for everything. So that's where I'm at on that.
Yeah, just brag about your OLED monitor over there.
I'm sorry, Nate. That one's not as expensive as you think, though. You can get that one for literally $1,000 right now because it's a few
well. Then you better link
old.
Me up because that might be going on the wish list.
All right, Amazon affiliate link coming your way.
Yes.
But, so we have a better way to communicate
1%.
now.
Got it.
I don't check my X messages, which sounds weird to say out loud, but
what's X? I don't even.
Right.
I don't check messages from my ex either.
Exactly. It's a weird, but anyway, so not always checking my X messages, but I am back. I'm happy to be back. I finally rolled the credits on Tears of the Kingdom, which I'm not going to say I beat the game because I still feel like I have a ton to freaking do. But oh my God, like extremely satisfied, walked away, like just 10 out of 10 experience all the way through. A masterpiece of a game, couldn't be any happier. And immediately went into, because almost the same time, Oracle of Ages and Seasons dropped. So now I'm playing Oracle of Ages. So that's been fun. And then
good time to be a Zelda fan.
It's a great time to be a Zelda fan. And that's what's crazy is I haven't finished my Minish Cap run through, but I'm already starting Ages and Seasons, which I kind of feel like
those games aren't as long as Minish Cap. So.
Exactly, that too. So anyway, yeah, it's all Zelda here lately.
Nice. Well, guys, you know who I am. Obviously, Nathaniel Rumplejans, Mr. Nintendo Prime. We're there's a couple things I'm sort of dabbling right now. I'm still playing Pikmin 4. I'll probably be playing Pikmin 4 a huge chunk of this month. I purposely been slow playing it because, just be honest, there's nothing really coming out in August I care about other than Madden, and I don't really like Madden. I just play with other people. So if I'm playing by myself, which is what I'm doing 99% of the time, there's a joke somewhere in there that I want to keep to myself. Then yeah, we're just I'm going to be playing a lot of Pikmin 4. However, one thing happened because of a certain news that popped up about a certain game called Sparks of Hope that reminded me that I hadn't beaten the DLC I have currently for it. So I've been playing through that level and reminding myself how awesome this game is and how this is actually my favorite level in the game, my favorite world in the game. And it came in DLC. And now we'll be talking about it. We'll not really talk about it, briefly mentioning the new DLC they announced that we knew was coming. We just didn't know what was in it but Rayman. So we'll get to that in a little bit. But yeah, so I've been playing both of that this last week, and I'll probably that's probably all I'll be playing this whole month is that DLC and the new DLC when it comes at the end of the month, and then Pikmin 4 and a little bit of Madden later this month. But that's all right because I don't know, Nintendo didn't give us anything to play this month. So look, I play every system, but like there's just nothing else out or coming out this month that I'm really that interested in playing really anywhere, which is fine. That's cool. Sometimes it's nice to know I can slow play games and not rush through because the next thing's coming. But before we get into our topic today, because guys, we're talking Switch 2. It's literally like the only topic of the whole podcast is Switch 2 because this is the first time since probably 2020 when we started at the Bloomberg report on Switch Pro that we had something like that feels tangible to talk about from not just like random places on the internet or the Gaming Leaks and Rumors subreddit. It's like something from actual journalists with information, and all of them seem to be in agreement on a big key thing, such as dev units are out there with the major publishers. They got them, and that's why we're hearing about it. So we'll get to that in a moment. First, I want to do a quick rundown of the quick news, just a little recap of the stuff we're not talking about today, but some of it's pretty big stories on their own. Some of it's like really big stories. Example, Pokemon Presents was leaked through a data mine of Pokemon Masters EX. What a strange way to get that leaked. The date sort of lines up to August 8th, but that might just be an announcement date. Who really knows? They usually do them on Wednesdays, not Tuesdays, but usually isn't always. So who really knows? But next week. You can just say next week. That seems to be the case. And obviously, if you're a Nintendo aficionado, you know that Pokemon Presents usually happen 3 to 4 weeks before a Direct. So September's coming up. We already expected Direct, but maybe we expected in early September. Who knows? Maybe end of August. Who the heck knows what's going to happen? It's Nintendo. But the point is, if a Presents is here, within a month we should have a Direct. So that's always exciting.
We got that World Championship coming, so
yeah, the World Championships are coming up, and we could talk more about what it means for a Direct next week because obviously the Pokemon Presents should happen before the next podcast. They also announced the Mario plus Rabbids DLC. I teased it earlier for Sparks of Hope called The Phantom Show. Does feature Rayman as a playable character, which we sort of knew. We technically didn't know if he'd be playable, but it was pretty safe assumption he was going to be playable. And the return of the Phantom Rabbit from the first game, which in my opinion was the best boss fight in the entire game. Mm-hmm. Dude, opera singing while fighting, badass. And he's back, and the whole level's like movie sets, and oh, I'm so excited. It's going to be awesome. Mm-hmm. Oh, and I hope this is not the end of Sparks of Hope or the end of Mario plus Rabbids, really, because Yves Guillemot didn't sound too confident that this franchise is going to continue when he said, oh, we're disappointed in sales, but we think this will be a 10-year game. Oh, so you're going to re-release it. And then what?
But if the Switch 2 is backwards compatible, you might have a problem.
Yeah. I mean, but they could repackage it in 4K. That's gonna be the selling point. It's all the DLC together for one price, which they'll try to make cheaper than buying it separately. And they'll say it's 4K.
Yeah,
they won't release the 4K update for it.
And that makes sense because like you see that on the same platform before. Like there'll be there'll be like a Game of the Year edition or like
it's gonna be something like that.
That they can get away with.
And then they'll hold back the 4K DLS updates exclusively for the new version or something because it'll be like the deluxe ultimate edition.
There's a way I think they can go about doing that. Yeah.
Well, and we've seen a lot of this happen with like a lot of games on PlayStation over the years. When they have backwards compatibility, you still end up getting the ultimate editions and all the stuff with the extra upgrades or remasters that don't really feel like remasters, but it's a slightly higher resolution. So enjoy. Especially early in PlayStation Life, not so much later.
Small updates like that sometimes get me to replay games too. You know, I do if it's a game that I actually care about.
You're part of the problem.
Double dip. Yeah, it's true because I did it with PlayStation games. But if stuff gets enough of like a performance patch, you know, it's 4K, it's 60 FPS now. Well, okay, I'm gonna grab it and I'm gonna re-experience it. It's just I am part of the problem.
Yeah, that's all right. So I'm that way with some Nintendo stuff. Like, did I really need to get Twilight Princess HD on Wii U? Did I really need that? Not really. No,
that was a substantial enough upgrade.
I bought Zelda games more than once.
Yeah.
I never bought one on Virtual Console. Proud to say.
What Ubisoft needs to do to get me to get into my Rabbids, because I never got into any of the Rabbids games, and I probably should have, but you know how things go. There's just so many games to play. I just never got around to it.
Not this
month. It probably well, yeah, but there's something I got 100% Pikmin 4, I got 100% Tears of the Kingdom, and then I have a huge backlog.
No one said you had 100%. That's a personal choice.
It's an important. Well, okay. The thing is with Pikmin and Zelda, there's potential lore and theory stuff I could.
Yeah.
So
I hear that.
Either way,
I don't know how much lore you need with all of the Korok seeds.
I don't count that.
We already know how that ends.
I don't even think you need that to get the 100% marker. So
I have no idea.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure you don't.
You needed it in the last game.
That's how it worked. I don't know.
I'm pretty sure you needed all of them to get the 100% in the last game.
Well, I'll have to look.
Check and check me on that. Either body check me or confirm. We have plenty of 100%ers in our chat.
I do not think so. Like the map where the map shows the percentage, I do not think so. I think that's excluded.
Okay.
Just besides the point, though.
I wouldn't know. I never got 100% in the game, so I couldn't tell you.
Yeah. The main point is the only way I can really envision myself getting into Mario Rabbids, and it's not because I don't think the games are good. It's just purely a time thing. But like, if they really want to get me, when Switch 2 comes out, bundle both games together in 4K, all of the DLC as like a Mario Rabbids sort of like world kind of thing. Maybe even throw in like an additional new DLC, right? Like, so it's another expansion there to kind of give it that little bit of extra content in 4K with better visuals, all the content in one place. I'll spend $70 on that. And that might be when I actually do it.
Sure. Absolutely. And who knows? They can always add new content too. I mean, come on, they brought Mario Kart over, and then we got another DLC for Mario Kart 8, even though we already had DLC, so you never know. And the chat does look like they are saying you absolutely needed all of them to get 100%, and it actually made up a huge chunk of the overall percentage with 100%.
Yeah, and
now whether that's true in Tears of the Kingdom, I don't know, because I'm not even close to doing all the side quests yet. But
I got it right here. If you want the list.
Oh boy, is this the Tears of the Kingdom list?
Yes.
Are Korok seeds included?
Yes.
Complete
21 out of 23 main quests.
21 out of 23. That's not even 100.
Hold on. It's because to destroy Ganondorf and find Princess Zelda won't mark
the
complete after you defeat the final boss.
Oh, so they'll just count it because you can't even get the percentage.
Right.
Counter. Okay.
Complete all 31 shrine quests.
Yep. Okay.
All 60 side adventures.
Yep.
All 139 side quests.
Yep.
All 18 memories.
Yep.
Complete all 152 shrines and open their treasure chests.
Check me.
And open the chest or it doesn't count.
Yep.
So not only 152, you gotta also open every chest. So even if you're like, I'm not gonna open that because I don't need the item, you better open it.
Or the amount of times you had full inventory.
I'm gonna have to go back and redo some of them. Oh no!
A lot. I always had full inventory. I was like, this sword sucks. I'm not gonna take it. You know,
I think you just have to open it. I don't think you
but still, I didn't open it.
Yeah.
Somebody does. I can easily get that, but I'm skipping it today.
So 152 shrines and then open their treasure chests. Activate all 120 light roots.
Yep.
Collect all 20 sages' wills.
Okay.
Complete the Hyrule Compendium. Obtain and finally upgrade all 136 armor pieces.
Oh,
that's a lot. It's a grind.
Obtain all 53 paraglider fabrics.
Okay. That's about
I don't know if this is supposed to be indented or not. Secure all 82 of Addison's signs.
Okay.
Collect all 1,000 Korok seeds.
Oh,
collect all 147 Booble gems. Obtain all 12 schema stones. All the caves, basically. Yep. All 12 schema stones. All 34 Yiga schematics. All 31 old maps. Fully upgrade your energy cell. Learn all 228 recipes. Obtain all 6 monster medals. Obtain 100% of the map completion. Obtain 11 pieces of horse equipment. Activate all 30 Zonai dispensers.
This is what I'm hearing.
And defeat every dungeon boss in the depths.
I am never going to 100% the game. That's all I heard.
No, I'm not going to get all the Koroks. You're right. Yeah.
A lot of that I will complete, but I don't know if I'm going to get all the bubble gems as an example. I'll get most of them, but I don't think I'm going to specifically hunt out to try to get.
Do they respawn?
I don't think so. I haven't. So. I think once you find one, you found it for that cave, but I could be wrong.
Yeah.
No, I'm not 100%ing Tears of the Kingdom. That list can.
But I will do all the shrines and all the quests for sure.
This is according to Exion.
Okay.
I don't know what.
Yeah. For the record, I double checked my game of Breath of the Wild. I do not have 100%.
Yeah.
There it is. He hasn't even 100% of that. You got some work to do, buddy.
Because I'm not going to get all the Korok seeds.
Get off the
I
Korok
have
map.
500 of 900. I don't need any more.
God.
Get off the Korok map.
Listen,
100%.
I don't think I've ever even completed a Pokedex for a single Pokemon game before. And that's the goal of the game. How can you expect me to do that for the Korok seeds that are all mundane the same and there's far more of them and that's the least important thing to do in these much more massive games?
Once you have your inventory fully upgraded, you don't really.
No, I also intentionally don't pick up my Koroks because I like keeping the backpack Koroks around so I can
mess with them.
Weird stuff. Yeah. So,
all right.
No.
All right. Moving on to a few more news stories we have here quick before we get to the main topic. The Xenoblade series had its official soundtracks added to iTunes and Amazon Music. Always nice to see some official soundtracks from Nintendo actually going to platforms we can listen to them on legally, of course. Because for some reason we just can't get this for everything. It's just pick and choose. Pick and choose all the pot. Oh, it's Pokemon today. Oh, cool. Well, now we're doing Xenoblade. What about Mario and Zelda and Kirby? No, none of those. Anyways, I don't know why it's Xenoblade, but it's Xenoblade. So, hey, Xenoblade's music is great. So it's cool now that you can officially purchase it, listen to it through those platforms. That's awesome.
Sorry, I just have to. You said Korok seeds in Breath of the Wild were a ton of it. They're 72% of 100%.
Wow.
The least important things that you freaking get. Each location is 0.8 or 0.9 each. Each shrine is 0.08% or 0.09% each for each location. Each shrine is 0.08% each, and each divine beast is 0.08 each. So the 4 divine beasts are 0.32% of the game.
By the way, when I checked my percentage for Breath of the Wild,
it said
53.9.
Yeah, that makes sense with 400 Korok seeds.
Literally everything else.
You're like, I know I 100% of the game. I just didn't do the seeds. Then you're like, oh shit, it really says I did not do
what it is that I knew in my heart that I 100%ed the game. But the actual number says
the actual number,
because I ignored the Koroks.
This is an interesting story that I almost made a video on today. I ran out of time. The Wii U online play just randomly resuming tomorrow for Mario Kart 8 and Splatoon was shut down out of nowhere in March of 2023 due to a vulnerability that, it must have been there this entire time and they didn't care. So they shut it down. And a lot of the speculation online was this is their attempt to slowly shut down stuff on Wii U because they already have been shutting down stuff. But now they're bringing it back. So maybe they weren't lying and it just took this long for the one guy they hired to fix it. That's what
Oatmeal Dome just tweeted that version 4.2 is now out and servers are back up. So
there it is.
It just got back
there
online.
It is. You can go download the update right now for those games and Enjoy your online Wii U for all 5 people out there still playing. Congrats. But no, seriously, it is really good they brought it back, but also I don't know. Like, this vulnerability had to be there a long time. So why are they randomly choosing now when they're not even going to keep these services going much longer? And they obviously hired someone to fix it. So congrats to probably the all of one person they had working on it. So that's the only reason I can explain why it took this long.
Yeah.
So, anyways, good news for those though that we're hoping to get in some old school OG Mario Kart 8 and Splatoon.
Either that or Nintendo are like, I feel like we're forgetting something. Oh yeah, that's right. We have to work on that yet.
I don't know if it's much of a high priority.
Yeah, no.
Now, another interesting thing came from a little interview about Metroid Dread. We got a couple interesting points. One, that Metroid Dread sold over 3 million units. We don't get an exact figure, but it's our first sales update in like over a year. So it probably hit it last year within the first year of the game, but Nintendo never updates it because Nintendo only updates when it sells 1 million units in a given quarter. So it never sold another 1 million units in a given quarter, but it obviously never crossed 4 million either because he would have said 4 million plus. So somewhere in the 3 millions it is sitting, and that's cool. That is the best-selling Metroid game of all time. It sucks we don't know an exact figure.
It's almost like he didn't know either, because like the quote that I read, if it was translated correctly, was like 3 point something million. It's like the CEO of Mercury Steam can't get told exactly how many copies the game has sold.
Yeah. So the CEO of Mercury Steam, Enrique Alvarez, he wanted to address the comments made earlier that it was a chaotic development cycle. And he said, I don't know how you can call it a chaotic development cycle when the game is one of the highest rated games of the year, was up for Game of the Year, won awards at the Game Awards. He's just kind of noting, I don't really understand where that came from, because usually chaotic development cycles don't result in that level of game. Now, of course, this is coming from the very, very top of the company. It's always a note to caveat that he's never going to want stories out there that make the company look bad. So that doesn't mean the stories aren't true. But from the top, he's saying, hey, I don't know what the problem is. We produced a GOTY game. Okay, well, cool. I don't really know what to say either, because I have no firsthand knowledge of anything that happened. So all we have is former developers that said some stuff. So it is what it is. It's the way it goes.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not saying that there isn't anything weird or bad that happened behind the scenes, but I do think when a game like that is done and with how much quality it has, I mean, it's kind of like a perfect game. Like they literally designed sequence breaking into the map.
Yeah,
like that is next level design, planning, and polish. So I'm inclined to think that development probably was. I don't know. I mean, I'm not saying they weren't worked hard, but
the only thing I could
body
think
of work does support the argument.
When I heard the word chaotic, I kept wondering, are they trying to avoid the word crunch?
Mm-hmm.
That's what I kept wondering. It was like, was there a lot of crunch to hit the deadline that it was coming out on? And the quality was unquestioned, but to get there, they had to do some stuff that maybe they didn't want to do. So that's the only thing I could think of, and they just didn't want to use that word because it is. I don't want to say it's overused, but it just kind of feels like that's the consistent complaint all the time.
Yeah.
There's crunch, there's crunch. And like, if we call it chaotic, it sounds not as bad.
It's a dangerous word for a higher up, because that could be a media PR storm, and it's not good. But I will say, right, and I don't want to say this because I want to believe that everything about Metroid Dread is perfect in every way possible. But Metroid Prime, which is another game I want to believe is perfect in every way possible, they are like one of that development team made that masterpiece in a very short amount of time, and they went through a great deal of crunch. I gotta go back and look at the numbers, but I think I don't want to throw out a number, but they definitely worked beyond overtime.
Yeah. So so it's one of those things where.
And that game was a masterpiece.
Maybe it wasn't as chaotic as it maybe sounded like. Maybe it was. Who knows? Because, again, none of the exact details were ever given from the former employees. And obviously, when you produce a game that great, Mercury Steam wants to be able to kind of puff its chest and go, look what we did. Not, we did bad things to get here. So who knows? But it was nice to get a sales update. It's officially across 3 mil, point something. Don't know. But that's awesome. Best-selling Metroid of all time. Maybe until Metroid Prime 4 comes out. We'll see. But I mean, heck, if Metroid Prime 4 doesn't outsell it, then they need to keep going with these side-scrolling Metroids, especially when they're that good.
I feel
they
like
should keep going anyways.
I feel like that interview also hinted at the fact that Mercury Steam is probably doing another 2D Metroid. Or I mean, it was like
it sounded like we got another one coming.
Yeah, like we love this partnership. It was massively successful, best-selling Metroid ever. We respect Nintendo. There's some hardworking geniuses over there. We're doing our thing and adding our flair to it. Like it was a sales pitch for like we want to work on this franchise with Nintendo as long as possible.
Right. And with it selling that much,
Returns is great. Metroid Dread sales I mean, is this Mercury Steam's biggest game?
Maybe. I'd have to look at everything they've ever put out.
I mean, 3 million compared to some of Nintendo's biggest games is a little, underwhelming.
Well, yeah, but for a side-scrolling Metroid game,
sure, right? Yeah, for that genre, it's staggering, and just for the industry, 3 million is impressive. Nintendo's just like the top of the top, right?
And they got a side-scrolling game nominated for Game of the Year, which just doesn't happen. I know it was a weaker year, to be fair.
And it won Best Action Game.
But yeah, and it won Best Action Game. So there's going to be another one. I'm really excited about it. Just like Grezzo is going to have another Zelda remake at some point as well, at least with Link's Awakening, how well it did.
Right.
So it's like we just know it's going to happen. It's just when, probably the next system. So we'll see what happens. So
by the way, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. I was
trying to segue. I was in the groove.
I ruined it. I'm so sorry. I was just gonna say, when I say Metroid 6, that's not to confuse it with Metroid Prime 4. 2 different things.
Yeah, those are 2 different. Yeah, 2 different lines of games for those who don't know.
It's like
Metroid
Mario
Dread was
Bros.
Supposed to be
Super
the end
Mario.
of the Metroid 1 through 5. It was supposed to be the end. Is it the end? I guess we'll find out when the next one comes out and if it starts a new line or not. So we'll see. That being said, we are talking about Switch 2. Ah, man, I can't believe we made it. Yes. No, it didn't work. Dang it. I was hoping it was going to work and come through the microphone, but it didn't because I don't have it set up properly.
Right.
That being said, Switch 2, baby. I am so excited to talk about it. It kind of broke into 3 different topics and multiple parts of each topic. The reason we're talking about Switch 2 is primarily because of all the reports you guys know. There's been a bunch of news out there, starting with Video Game Chronicles, Eurogamer adding on, Jeff Grubb chiming in a little bit. Oh, our favorite Nintendo insider, the only one that's left since, Emily Rogers retired, Nate the Hate chiming in as well, where we're getting everything pieced together to get some pretty specific details in some instances on what this is, in large part because at some point in the middle of July, Nintendo sent out those dev kits to all the big name studios. So it's to the point now that we're probably going to hear a lot about this. By the end of the year, we might know exactly what this thing is if it's not even announced yet. And there's a report floating out there. It might even be announced soon. In fact, as crazy as that report sounds, Jeff Grubb chimed in and was like, hey, yeah, that's actually what I've been hearing this entire time, that it's being announced for the end of summer. And I'm like, what are we talking about? So let's get into the first part about this before we get to what Jeff Grubb said, because he's really maybe the only one with the credibility, because I don't know about that other outlet, but we'll bring them up when it's time. Release timing. All right, let's go over what was reported this week on the release timing. Then we'll discuss when we think it's going to happen. Do we think they're correct on this? What's going on? So Andy Robinson from Video Game Chronicles said it's coming out in the second half of 2024. Eurogamer corroborated that report. Nate the Hate says he has heard the exact same thing since January. And he speculated that it could be anywhere from September onward. Again, speculation. Obviously, second half's July and onwards. And he said that mass production, according to what Nate the Hate has heard, is beginning in Q1 of the calendar year of 2024. So that would suggest that while they're making some now, the big production push is at the very beginning of next year. Let me see. I think, there is. Well, we'll get into the reveal in a little bit. Let's just talk about that. Just the release portion here of its release timing. What are you guys thinking about the release timing that's being reported right now from more reputable places? We've heard other places go, oh, it's early, but like these are places that have like journalistic integrity, I guess is what I would say.
I have a theory real quick on why we might be hearing that it's Q1 2024 from these manufacturers, but then the game developers are saying it's towards the end of 2024, because I don't think Nintendo has to let any of the manufacturers know when they're intending to launch the hardware at all. So investor briefings might be reporting, well, our business is going to spike Q1 2024, which is actually just when mass production starts. or maybe even the end of 2023, but we're going to start to have those finances rolling in from all of these new orders. And then they're thinking Nintendo is going to turn around and launch it right away. Whereas if Nintendo's actually trying to mitigate the stock shortage issue, they might be producing this thing for a lot longer. And then hence we see summertime at the earliest, but probably like that September, October time frame, like Nate the Hate was saying. I don't know, that's maybe one explanation for it, but it's weird that we're seeing those financial briefings say early Q1 2024, and then we're seeing developers who I think would have more of a know, like, or more be in more of the
they got to know when their product should be ready.
They got to know when their game's supposed to be ready. So I tend to believe the late 2024 reports now that's coming out more than the early.
Yeah. I'm on the same page at this point. You know, we've had a lot of information that seems like it's been conflicting, right? But I think I'm kind of settled down to a similar perspective. And I think your theory is maybe spot on. It's interesting because, I think the reason we're hearing about this early 2024 stuff is because of it's coming from a different place. But, and maybe it's possible that if Nintendo wanted to, they could release Switch 2 this March or some time between this March and this June. But what they're going to do is they're going to wait. Why? Because they can. And let's think about this for a moment. It's been kind of a common theme for Nintendo in the last few years to be sitting on stuff until they feel it's a better time. Nintendo, because of how successful the Switch has been and because of unified their gaming divisions, they have the luxury of being able to sit on their products and wait for the right time to put it out. So I think this is a very Nintendo thing. I think the manufacturers aren't wrong in a sense, because Nintendo could release a system early 2024, but they're not going to, because they're going to release it when they think it makes the most sense for them.
Yeah, I mean,
I could think of something. I mean, you know, just kind of what Andres was saying, they could, and all the games that they're sitting on, the reason why they're telling other developers later in the year is because they're going to release it early in the year and just dump Nintendo games on us. And the first part of the Switch 2 or whatever the console's name is just going to be big time Nintendo game after big time Nintendo game after big time Nintendo game. And then we're slowly going to start working in your bigger third parties and everything like that. So that's an interesting thought, but I mean, don't know if that's true or not. Obviously, it's just a thought of mine.
Well, when I was listening to all the podcasts, because Andy Robinson went on a podcast, obviously Jeff Grubb and Nate Tate did as well. A consensus seemed to be that a lot of these Q1 reports that were coming out weren't necessarily wrong. It was just a misunderstanding of what Q1 meant. Because if all that came from manufacturing, well, all our manufacturing knows is that there's a huge ramp up at the beginning of next year. You know, maybe that was confused to be, it's out, and they're ramping up because they got to get more and more of them out. When reality is, because it's not normal to ramp up at the beginning of the year. Usually, it's usually you slow down at the beginning of the year. But if it's not coming out till later, and I think it was Nate the Hate who mentioned, what if Nintendo is planning to do something that no other system has done, where usually at launch there's about 3 to 4 million ready to go, and they always sell out. Every system always sells out. What if Nintendo is going to no, we're going in with 10. We're going in with 10 plus, and we're going to be that system that's going to be hard to sell out. We're not going to let the scalpers dominate the market, and we're going to try to make sure we are readily available and potentially do launch at 10 million in that first couple of months. And that's a very interesting perspective, because that's never happened. No one's ever had that amount of units ready to go at launch. And that would be interesting if they looked at the landscape and when we think the demand for this is going to be high, even if they internally want it to be as high as Switch, they might just go, but we're going to have a 3D Mario. We know that, hey, we're going to have a Mario Kart coming soon after. We're going to have this. We're going to have that. Like we know we're going to sell at least 10 million. Look at Wii U. It's our worst system, and we still sold 13 mil. We're going to sell at least 10. Let's have 10 ready to go out the gate. And then obviously if it takes off, they'll just keep that ramped up production going and hopefully just keep up and never run into a problem. But this is one of those things where the release timing to the second half makes sense in some regards, as long as they keep games coming. Now we know about a couple of games next year for Switch already announced. Doesn't mean there could be more. Probably have at least one more direct this year in September. So there's probably going to be more games announced potentially. We'll see. I mean, the biggest thing Nintendo's done is kind of let systems die. And right now, it doesn't look like they're letting Switch die. But that's this year. We still don't know next year. And we don't know how late into 2024 it's going to launch. Conventional wisdom says holiday because that's when a lot of systems launch or in holiday period. But what if Nintendo goes sooner because they want to have it out and see the reaction pre-holiday so they know what to do for holiday? Like as an example, if it's a 3DS situation where they release it, it's too expensive and the marketplace isn't latching on. They might want to know if they need to drop the price before holiday hits instead of waiting. I mean, they did it.
That would be a disaster.
But it would be a disaster, sort of, because remember, it happened with 3DS. They launched it and it wasn't selling out.
You might get a cool colletion of games out of it, though.
Yeah, you might get a cool collection of games out of it. It'd be a disaster for Nintendo.
The only way to get Twilight Princess HD.
But 3DS bounced back after the price drop.
Mm-hmm.
So
it'd be a price drop disguised as a holiday sale.
But
it just never goes back up.
Yeah, that 3DS price drop was the first time Nintendo was willing to take a loss on a system to sell units. So obviously, from Nintendo's perspective, they don't want to have that. Like maybe it's in the back of their mind because the speculation out there is, and this is speculation from people like Nate the Hato, I never thought was speculated. He's thinking they might even try to sell this thing at $450. And that is a very expensive Nintendo device. And so they could be trying to set up for the concern that even Nintendo's going, what if this is just too high, but this is what it takes to be profitable?
If it's got 512 gigabytes, it might be. I know that's a spec conversation.
Yeah, we'll get to that.
Gosh, dang, yeah. But real quick on kind of the timeline and then maybe what Nintendo might be doing in terms of stock production. We've had, I think it was the most recent investors meeting that Furukawa was talking about ways to not fall into the scalping situation. And it sounded like, if I'm remembering the quote right, it was something along the lines of like, figuring out ways in manufacturing to produce enough stock to meet demand. Like they maybe they'll do something creative like Sony where you have a queue on Nintendo's direct website, but they can't control Target and Walmart and Amazon and everybody else.
It better not be online only.
That would be terrible. But and hopefully it's not. I mean, at least it's not like the Sony and Microsoft thing where it just so happened to launch during, where nobody was going into stores because of pandemic.
That was unfortunate,
That was. But I don't know if Nintendo will go that far. I think the way that they will try to combat scalping, if they're being serious about their comments there, would just be to stockpile a bunch of these things. And it might be something that we've never seen.
Yeah, you overwhelm the market. You pay scalpers. Nintendo's just going to thank you for increasing their sales because it ain't going to be hard to get.
Yep.
Yeah, it's happened a couple times where certain special editions of Switch, like scalpers, try to get all on top of it, and like the next day, here's another wave of stock, and they're like, yeah, we were ready for you. So maybe they want to be ready this time. Be like, nope, everyone who wants it and wants to play 3D Mario or whatever launch it. We want you to be able to do it. We don't want it to be even a Switch situation where more people bought Breath of the Wild than Switches were available.
Right.
Like clearly they're like, there was some demand we missed there. Let's hit it. Because they probably know, and they probably learned throughout this, the best marketing is word of mouth, and you get word of mouth by being in people's hands. So we'll see. Obviously, when it comes to that launch, none of us know, but that's the currently reported as second half sometime.
Yeah, I do have an idea. I think the latest we see it is October, and my reasoning for that is because there's still a Pokemon game coming out next year. And usually the physical Pokemon releases come out in November. And Nintendo already has built up a history of having a strong Mario title to release in October before that November time period. I mean, even this year it's Mario Bros. Wonder, but back in 2017, we had Mario Odyssey in October, and there was still a big Pokemon game that came out for the 3DS in November. So what I'm thinking is going to happen is the latest we see Switch 2 is October with 3D Mario. And then maybe that Legends theorized Unova game comes out November. It would still be for Switch, but maybe it looks and runs better on the Switch too.
Yeah, they're not going to make Pokemon Company definitely won't take it off Switch. They hate going to the next platform when it doesn't have a big install base.
Right. But imagine
they're a little late to the party every time. But
a Legends game on new hardware though.
Yeah, let's go.
And if there's backwards compatibility, it won't really matter anyway.
I don't think we'll see it at this Pokemon Presents, but that Legends Unova game, if that's real,
my
that's
gosh, what
number
if we
one Pokemon dream right now.
Yeah. The Pokemon.
What if they show a Scarlet and Violet DLC scheduled for winter, and it just happens to look significantly improved visually?
We'll see.
Over.
That's still and
I'm gonna start going. Wait a second. Q1. Wait. What?
Well, to play devil's advocate with the later expectations for Switch 2024. I mean, we had those reports. Unless if that guy threw in something that is off on the timing, or he just wanted to troll and he didn't have Switch 2 launch information. Like, he got so much stuff right from the Pokemon leak. Yeah. And then before it was officially announced for the DLC, and then he was saying that it's going to be a performance patch that's scheduled to launch alongside of DLC 2. Unless if he means that DLC, like, you know, the ones that are coming out, like there's a separate DLC that hasn't been announced for late 2024, but I would be surprised to see that.
I mean, it could just be bogus.
Could be bogus.
Or it could have been planned. It could have been a planned thing they're not doing now. Yeah. Or maybe it's a patch they're not going to use until it comes out, and they were just doing it when it's ready.
Those are all options. Yeah. And I'm not sure we'll ever know the truth.
I mean, we'll know the truth when the new system comes out and there's a graphics update patch released, then we know that it was true. It just whenever the system.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, yeah. Maybe you're right on that. Yeah.
But we'll see.
Yeah. Anyways, point is, latest is October. I want to see it sooner. Sooner.
Everyone wants it sooner.
But
that gets into this next part of this topic, and that is, when will they reveal it if this is true? Now, true second half, because a new report out of Start Menu UK, which is a UK news website, which I absolutely know nothing about because I don't follow UK news websites like hardly at all. So I have no idea how much validity they have. But they claimed that it will be revealed at Gamescom, and says there are no press meetings for it, however. The author on Twitter, though, seems to be backtracking a little bit, which makes it really, really sus, claiming it might just be business meetings and not necessarily discussed publicly, which is not the way their article was framed at all. So it seems like a complete backtrack because they got too much attention. So, by the way, they also, the biggest red flag to me is that they said Nintendo, the Tokyo company, which everyone knows they're not based in Tokyo, they're based in Kyoto. So, yes, they do have a studio in Tokyo, absolutely, but they're not based in Tokyo. So a lot of red flags with that one. But this was the weird one, because this is someone who you argue has red flags, but also gets things right. Jeff Grubb, on his Last of the Nintendogs podcast, said this week that everyone, and I don't know who everyone is, because of course he doesn't dive too deep into it. Yeah, because this was brought up, this article, this stuff, this news, all of it was brought up, like, on revealing it. And he said everyone's been telling him that we're going to hear about this damn system this year before the end of summer. And
I thought I just heard before the end of the year.
No, he clarified by end of summer yesterday. Mm-hmm. I re-listened to it when I wrote that. Wrote that in to make sure that's what he said.
If this is the Retro Studios contact, though, that told him Prime 1 Remaster was coming out before the end of 2022.
Yeah, right.
We know we're just 6 months off. No.
So before we get into the speculation, just to add in a little context, because I don't know what "hear about it" means, because there's a few things. We could literally hear about it tonight. Nintendo announced the NX publicly back in 2015. So we knew a next generation device was coming, because Nintendo even gave it the code name out publicly. Now, why they did it, they explained why they revealed that code name so early. They revealed that later. But the point is, they did tell us that a new one was coming then. So even though Switch was like announced 5, but we knew it was coming. We knew it was coming, and they repeated it again at E3 2016 when they said, and they told us, Breath of the Wild's coming to our next generation device to be announced later this year. Mm-hmm. They just said it. So, like, that's admitting that a device is coming without telling you what it is. And then they revealed it, obviously, in October. And they've actually done this before with, like, the Wii U was announced in E3 2011. Didn't come out till a year and a half later.
When did we know about Project Cafe, which is a code name for Wii U?
That code name didn't come from Nintendo. That was leaked by developers. Yeah. So that's why I'm saying Nintendo put NX out there almost 2 years early. And they put Wii U, they literally announced it a year and a half early. So there is a history that if this is anywhere from September to holiday next year, we're about 18 months out. That seems to be about when Nintendo seems to let people know. PlayStation 5 was technically announced in April of 2019, just to put out that other companies do the same thing. Now, announcing something exists isn't the same as showing it off and giving you details. So that's why it's like Jeff Grubb will be like, yeah, Nintendo might acknowledge this thing is coming next year, and that might be all you get. So that's why, and by the way, why I said it could be as soon as tonight is because Nintendo has their investors meeting tonight. So they're going to unveil their Q2 sales figures, which includes all the Zelda stuff, and there will be a Q&A, and they'll take questions. And if you guys haven't noticed, every Q&A is almost nothing but Switch 2 questions. It's like literally all the investors are asking about. So Nintendo could drop a code name.
They want saying to change that.
Yeah. So they could drop a code name and say, hey, code name whatever is coming at some point, and who knows. So that's just what they've done in the past, combined with what we're being told. So now the question is, when do you guys think this thing's being unveiled, presuming that this second half of next year is correct? It's just tough.
Yeah, this is a tough one. And I'm kind of with you on I guess, okay, the way that I could see it happening this year is an acknowledgement that new hardware is coming. And will they even say 2024, or will they just say we're working, we are in the stages of releasing new hardware, and that's all we can say for now? I don't think they're going to do an NX.
Look forward to more information in 2024.
Yeah, right. I don't know, man. How they reveal it, I feel like the Nintendo of today is a lot more keep it under wraps as long as possible before they're ready to drop it and then just go full on marketing with it. And I kind of feel like we're just going to wake up to a reveal trailer one day of here's the next generation Nintendo console. That's how I feel like they're going to do it. But the investor briefing thing, I can see them acknowledging that yes, we're getting close to new hardware, and maybe that's the quote unquote how we hear about it. I would be amazed if Nintendo actually showcases this thing in some kind of features trailer, or here's what to expect before holiday season 2023, if it's not coming out in the first, which the caveat to this whole thing is if it does actually come out first quarter, if they do another March launch in 2024, then all that changes. We should hear about it this year with features and stuff. But if that's not the case, and we're to believe the late 2024 part, it makes zero sense for Nintendo to show this thing off and put it on consumers' radar before the end of this year. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's a coin flip.
I'm going to be consistent with what I've said before. In terms of the small outside chance of an early 2024 release, it would be announced by the end of this August, which is what that start menu article is suggesting, potentially, even though the writer has said that.
Well, and the writer said that same source said second half of next year, but announced at Gamescom or right before Gamescom.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
which is
it could just be piggybacking off of the other articles.
Yeah, that's what some people
they
think.
Have heard announced it is coming.
But I don't want to shit on the guy too much because I know nothing about this outlet. They might be super reputable, and this guy just doesn't know a lot about Nintendo.
From what I saw on Twitter, it sounded pretty good to me. But all I'm going to say on it is, in my opinion, because I'm kind of with you, Sunbro, a Nintendo of today has shorter announcement to release windows. That's what they're about now. Kind of how we talked about earlier. The Nintendo of today has the luxury of being able to sit on things.
I have a counterpoint. Well, I'll let you finish. I got a counterpoint to that.
I know you do. But Nintendo has the luxury of sitting on things. So I expect that there's going to be a shorter announcement. Maybe it won't be as short as the one with the Switch when they had the teaser in October and the presentation in January and the release in March. But I don't think we're going to wait like 13 months, between announcement and release. I don't see that happening. So either A, Eurogamer and VGC are wrong, and it's coming out early and it's getting announced in August, but more likely it's coming out sometime in the second half. And I don't think it's going to have a trailer until sometime early next year, right? Or a presentation. And in terms of it getting announced, I mean, I think we're going to get rumors and leaks and things all throughout. I think those floodgates have opened, so there's going to be a fun conversation. But in terms of confirmations, we're not going to get that until next year. Nintendo, to your point, Nintendo may confirm something in a financial meeting, but I don't even qualify. I don't know if I would qualify that as an announcement, or if it is. I mean, yeah, it would be, but I don't know if that's something that Jeff Grubb would even hear about. You might hear that Nintendo may have a promotional plan about it, but would he have sources on what that's going to be relayed in a financial briefing? That's a different kind of information. So I'm not sure about that.
Well, it kind of depends, because if Nintendo already knows they're going to say mention the code name for it, and that say it's, tune in next year for more information or something. that would be something that I'm sure Nintendo's PR teams around the world would know Nintendo's going to say before they say it.
I'll be right back.
Sure. But, I mean, I get what you're saying, right? Like, oh yeah, so like I can imagine like Nintendo's Twitter. Hey,
a panic reaction.
NX2 is coming out next year. Expect more news soon. Like they may acknowledge the existence on Twitter.
It'll be interesting
after the financial briefing.
So the counterpoint I had is, can you tell me a new generation of hardware that's been a short announcement to release? Because our theories on this come from, but Switch was technically announced as NX in 2015.
Well, the code name was right.
Yes, but we knew it next. That's what I'm saying though. Like it was a couple years out, and while we didn't know what it was, they talked about it. They announced it. They said it was coming. They talked about it again before they showed it off at E3, saying, "Hey, they even showed off a game for it. This game is coming day one to this thing that we're not talking about yet."
Revisions have had.
Now, granted, that was because of the Wii U's bomb that they even did that, but it's just pointing out that, like, hey, the Wii U, the successful platform. The Wii was literally their most successful home console of all time, and they still announced the Wii U a year and a half early.
Nintendo Revolution.
Yeah, I think Revolution back in the day.
I think actually early promotion had the code name as on the
they announced it as the Nintendo Revolution, and everyone's like, "That's the name." And then when we found out the real name, and that was the code, why did you announce the code name?
Revolution would have.
That Revolution name was so sweet. Why did you? Not that I hate the final name, but it was just kind of like, really.
I don't hate it.
That's what I'm saying. I don't know
at the time.
The evidence to suggest it'll be a short announcement to release is what the Lite and the OLED, which weren't new hardware.
Mm-hmm.
Those are revisions.
The marketing cycle, because they announced it as the Switch in October, right?
Sure.
Right. So that's how I look at it. I mean, I understand what you're getting at. Like, we don't have.
I think the marketing probably began with Breath of the Wild at E3 when they said this is coming day one to the next system. I know they weren't marketing the system, but they were marketing like
I understand. I understand. I just think this is a different time. You know.
Well, we have a different president. That's the big thing. We don't know what Shinichiro Furukawa is going to do because he's never launched a new platform.
I mean, I got an idea that with how this Nintendo has gone, and them just shadow dropping shit, they're just gonna shadow drop a freaking just a logo.
Here's a logo. Go buy the system.
The logo. No, not go buy the system. Just a logo, and then it says tune in. X date for
they would do that
for something like that. Just shadow dropping that. Because could you imagine the actual absolute buzz that would generate? All of a sudden, just shadow dropping it out of nowhere. People would be like, "Wait, what? Hold on, what?" And
assuming it's not just Switch 2.
Yeah.
Well, right, but you put a logo. You just put a logo out there. You shadow drop a logo, and you just say tune in this date, and that's it.
Well, so the reason I brought up the counter argument was just because Nintendo's history. They announce things a year to a year and a half early. That's just what they do. I'm not saying they're going to do that. I just wanted to bring that up because that seems to be what Nintendo's MO has always been, and it didn't really change with Switch. They still let us know it was coming. Now you can argue they already did that for this by that slide in 2021 that said Nintendo accounts coming to next gen system 20XX. If you want to make that argument, I don't know that was a confirmation of anything other than we're going to keep making hardware.
That's about as confirmation as whenever we have those interviews after Mario or Zelda game, and they said we're already working next Mario or Zelda game.
Yes, yeah, right. Duh. Of course, there's more coming. So my thing is, if Jeff Grubb has any credence for it, and they're going to say something this year, the only thing I think that would be said would be, I mean, can they say tune in on this date next year for the reveal of our new system without already revealing it? Because with Switch, they revealed it, then they said tune in to this date for our full blowout of what this thing is, and blah, 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 that they did, I think in January of 2016 or whatever it was, or February. I think I don't know what Nintendo's going to do. If this is second half of next year, it makes a lot of sense to just not announce this until, I would say, right before the end of the fiscal year. I know some think right after. I think you do it right before. Because if your fiscal year report's coming in and it's going to show a 16% drop off year over year, which, you already put into your numbers and you already predicted, what you want is when you're talking about the drop off is to have a positive for the future to bring up. And a positive for the future would be, hey, it's March and we just announced a brand new platform coming out in like 5 months. And that would be, 6 months, even, whatever, push it out to September, October, whatever. So like, I think that to me makes sense. And that also is a shorter announced to release period than a lot of people think will happen. So I feel like that March or April area really feels like a good time to announce and show it off. But on the off chance like Jeff was right, even if we go by the end of the year, okay, well then they're going to announce it this year. Why? Maybe because it's coming July next year. I don't know. If it's a summer release next year, then maybe they do want to announce it. And people, but why? What's it hurt holiday sale? I don't know. Maybe Nintendo's looked at their holiday sales and realized it doesn't really matter. We've reached market saturation. We're going to price drop the damn thing. Our software is going to continue to sell like gangbusters, because why would people stop buying software, especially if they announce backwards compatibility? And there's no real reason to hold back on buying games. That's a big selling point, to keep buying games as you can bring them forward. And Nintendo will be fine, and they could announce this damn. Heck, maybe if they want to be really, really scummy, they could still announce it this year. Wait till after November and drop it in December.
That's not happening though.
And then they keep their holiday sales and get the announcement in, and didn't have to drop the price. That's corporate greed, Nintendo. Don't know if they're going to go that far, because there would be probably a negative reaction associated with that timing of an announcement. I would feel like they would probably do it before then. Heck, I would love for them to do it before Gamescom, for crying out loud, but they're probably not going to. So I'm thinking
on when it's coming out.
Yeah, I think it's early next year they announce it, and that might be it. But if they do announce it this year, as Jeff Grubb seems to have heard, everyone's saying they're going to. Who the hell is everyone? Are you talking about Nintendo PR people? Treehouse? What are we talking about? Okay, and if that's the plan, cool. How are they going to do it? I don't know. This is very interesting to me, because this is an uncharted territory for Nintendo. This is their best-selling home console of all time. Just straight up their best in every metric. It has sold more software than any system they have ever released, including DS. It has sold way more software. Over 1 billion. They've never done it before. And they're going to keep going up. It's probably going to end at 1.2, 1.3, 1.4 billion software sold on this damn thing. They are probably going to move at least 140 million units of this when it's all said and done, because they're probably about to announce 130 tomorrow. I feel like they can probably eke out another 10 million over the next couple of years. And when you consider all of that, and this being such a big deal, and they're still dropping semi-big game support. Mario Wonder is probably a pretty big deal. The Peach game could be a pretty big deal. Luigi's Mansion, maybe they're hoping is a big deal, because Luigi's Mansion 3 was. I don't know if it's going to be as big of a deal as 3. Personally, I'd be more excited for Luigi's Mansion 4, but you know what? It's fine. They probably want to say 4 for the next system. I totally get it. In fact, I almost expect Luigi's Mansion 4 to drop year 1. But just based on timing, because it came out in 29, it kind of feels like it would be like 2025. Feels like a really good time to drop a Luigi's Mansion. But we've never been in this position where Nintendo has all these games still coming on a still successful platform leading into the next, and Nintendo has never successfully transitioned from one popular platform into a platform they get just as popular. So this is uncharted territory for Nintendo, and we have a new president who, for the first time in since the GameCube, no, actually since N64, is a business-oriented CEO, not Iwata. Love Iwata. But he's handled every transition. Even Switch, while he wasn't there when it launched, he was the one who came up with the idea. So we'll see. And if this is iterative, Nintendo's never been able to release an iterative platform and see even close to the success of the first one. They've tried it. They tried it with Super Nintendo. They tried it with 3DS. Couldn't quite get there. Even the closest would probably be Game Boy Advance. I would say that did pretty damn well compared to Game Boy. If you want to argue that's iterative.
I forgot that they count Game Boy Color as
Game
Boy.
Right.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. Same family.
They might do the same thing with this next gen Switch.
Yeah, they might just consider the same family.
Call it new Nintendo Switch.
Oh my God! Get the new name out of here.
Yeah, right.
Get that new name out of here.
But then they could count it in the same family, and then all of a sudden, we're talking about the most successful gaming console in history. Period.
Yep.
So that's my only thoughts on like, or I guess all my thoughts on when they might announce it from. If Jeff Grubb's right, I don't know. They got to announce it before holiday then and let the price drop happen, which people think should happen anyways. And whoop-de-doo. Find out more next year. Here's a little 30-second teaser of our next generation.
Something I'll throw out, kind of going back to like the start menu article. It's possible that with that start menu person has heard the same thing Jeff Grubb has heard, and maybe what he's hearing about an announcement is just like an announcement to like insiders and developers where they start having those open conversations.
What I don't understand is
public announcement.
What I don't understand about that is that developers already have dev kits. So what are we?
Well, like maybe at Gamescom, for example, they actually start presenting it to more people.
Sure, but
or maybe the thing is that those dev kits happen this year.
Yeah,
so that counts.
Well,
if we go by that logic, right? Then it counts.
I don't know. Jeff Grubb's words made it pretty. It sounded like they were supposed to say something publicly based on what he said, but
right. But then
also, again, that could literally just be an acknowledgement and investor
Seasons
meeting
thing. If you check his Twitter, he said his first tweet was, "Oh, this is probably the Zelda thing." And then his second tweet was, "Oh, it probably is something else." Like he's not sure, right? Like so,
when he said, "Oh, this probably is the Zelda thing," and then when he backtracked, I think it's because. This is just because I've had a conversation with him. I couldn't get him to respond, but I asked why did he backtrack when he said that, oh, this must be the Zelda thing, and I'm guessing that his source must have reached out and been like, no, and he's like, oh, maybe not,
maybe,
but we don't know because he doesn't know what it is like that. That's the thing. Like with this, he literally was heavily saying that this thing's getting unveiled this year in some way. If it's not like a full blowout, like Nintendo will have it publicly announced in some form. But again, they don't have to. Like that's kind of the weird. Like they don't really have to. They could just sell the Switch still at full price this holiday, say nothing, announce it next year, and call it a day.
There's an avenue where everyone is correct though.
There's always one.
The avenue is that the system comes out in summer.
So Sumro, when do you think this thing's getting announced?
I mean, I could see it go in a number of different ways, but I don't think we're going to hear about it this year. Even with Jeff Grubb's comments, I would love to be wrong about that, but I still think that if Nate the Hate and Andy Robinson are hearing late 2024 launch, or at least second half 2024 launch, unless if it is that summer conversation, which would be unprecedented. But to your point, too, this is all speculation because we are like the Switch is in unprecedented territories and uncharted territories, rather, with its success. Brand new president of the company who wants to handle this differently than presidents past. We can't look at it like, oh, Nintendo's done this before, so they'll do it again, because it just doesn't make sense this time around. So I don't know. I'm more on where I'm setting my own personal expectations is a early 2024 announcement with a fall time, maybe into that holiday window, like actual launch. I do think September or October makes a lot of sense for the console's launch, especially with 3D Mario. And then we have the Pokemon game, like Andre said, too, in November, right? And that's like the Mario and Pokemon, and then whatever else they can throw at it, that's
and
huge.
News cycle-wise, might be able to avoid a possible PS5 Pro drop-in, like just in terms of headspace in some people's heads about what's launching.
I think the PS5 Pro will there's going to be a crowd for it, but so people do not seem sold on the idea that those consoles need an upgrade right now because
they need exclusive games on the current system.
That's going to be a blip.
We haven't even tapped into the potential of what those consoles are possible, or most people are still getting them for the first time if you weren't like hardcore tracking them down. So I don't know. I feel like that won't directly affect Nintendo at all, and I think Nintendo would know that. So I don't know. I feel like at that $399 price point, and then it might even help them because Sony might launch at $550 or $600 for PS5 Pro. And then, $300 or $399, $400 Nintendo Switch doesn't sound so bad compared to that. But I do think it would be smart for them to tackle holiday season just based off of the buying trends and patterns. And that's like the thing that everybody's going to try to go find that holiday season, which they will really have to ramp up production if they're going to try to meet demand like they said they would. So I'm team early 2024 announcement and team late 2024. It's in our hands.
Hypothetical. let's say Switch 2 comes out September, launches with 3D Mario. Then October, they put out Metroid Prime 4. Then November, Legends Kyurem. Like that's one heck of a that hits a lot of different, gamer profiles.
January, Mario Kart 9. Just keep it going.
Providing
at that point, you're like 4 or 5 months in, like, wait, well, hell.
Providing we don't get a ton of new software at the next September Nintendo Direct, and then let's look at what February looks like.
Or just remasters.
Right. If it's more of the ports and remasters type stuff, like we very well could be looking at Nintendo holding back a large portion of software to launch this new next-gen console, like a large portion, which would be exciting and scary at the same time to see how they navigate that. But we might have a serious amount of
guys, we have too many good next gen games. What are we gonna do? They'll probably pack it. I think they're gonna pack that first year just like they did with Switch. I think it's gonna just be that's one thing I think they want to repeat is a packed year one.
The September Nintendo Direct will be very telling in my opinion, because depending on what they show us there, I mean, if it feels like more of that,
I swear if they show 3D Mario and they don't say next gen system, they just go, oh yeah, Switch logo at the end. I'm gonna be like, okay,
I don't think
I'm gonna question if this is even coming out next year.
Yeah,
what is happening?
Honestly, I now believe 3D Mario is gonna be a Switch 2 exclusive.
I think so. They believe it exclusive to sell. So
yeah,
I agree.
I think so.
I think there'll be some cross gen, but it's not gonna be like a 3D Mario. They're gonna that.
Go ahead.
Well, I was just gonna say, like that hypothetical I threw at you guys, if that's what it is. Right, which I don't think is that much of a stretch. I'm not saying it's for sure, but it's solid. I think it's a solid possibility. Both Metroid Prime 4 and the Pokemon game are going to be cross-gen, or backwards compatible graphics matches, however you choose to think of that. But like, if that's your launch lineup, and then 3D Mario is the only like real exclusive. I mean, I feel like they could probably throw in something in December. I'm just not sure what they would put in December because that's
because I don't think the Pokemon game would be exclusive, but there'll be something. Yeah. They'd have something.
Well, my real quick thing on that, I think we're going to see more of a quick hard break than anybody's expecting from Nintendo with their transition to the new hardware. Like when Sony said we believe in generations, like they didn't. Obviously, Nintendo. I actually think that Nintendo's going to do the we believe in generations. Like they're actually going to cut off the Switch relatively soon with new software. Like outside of the big Zelda games, we don't see them do cross-gen releases. Like as far as their first party stuff, we might see third party stuff sold to the big Switch base as long as possible. But I really think Nintendo's going to pick like a handful of games that get a cross-gen version, and then we're going all next gen. Like I think they're going to try to get you on that new console as soon as possible.
Yeah. I mean, I think I would like to think that this Switch will still have some level of support with some remasters, but like the big new stuff that you're probably right, especially because the longer we wait, the more it makes sense to do, because it's already been a long generation.
Right.
Like by the time we're talking about holiday 2024, like that's 7.5 years.
Yeah.
That's a long generation for underpowered hardware. For any hardware, period, it's a long generation. I want to throw this out at you guys. Donkey Kong. I think Donkey Kong, regardless of what platform is on, has to be announced next year. My reasoning, because the Donkey Kong expansion opens next year. Unless that's delayed, I think the game, at least, even if it doesn't come out next year, has to be announced next
September this year.
The park?
No, they're going to announce the game this year. To come out next year.
Yeah, it might be like their big first half game to help propel us into that's what
I think. I don't know, but
what if
I think it kind of makes sense.
The Swang song, right? Because like Metroid Prime 4 Pokemon might be the Swang.
Look,
songs,
it's a better Swan song than Paper Mario Color Splash. All right. Like let's get some DK out there. Hey, and you know what? Oh, but it's so close. Yeah, but if they had already announced backwards compatibility, which we'll get into in a moment, because it's unclear right now if there's going to be. Of course, I think it would be unclear for any system this early out if there was going to be, because it was unclear for PlayStation this early out too. Before we get into the fun part here, where we get into the second part, where we actually talk about some actual potential specs, not power guys. We're not getting into that because that's sort of beat to death. We have the same information we've had the whole time about the T239 and all that stuff, and it's all speculative because no new information's come out on that yet. I would expect some new information before the end of this year from all the dev units out there that will probably hear something. But that's all we're hearing at the moment. We're just hearing some of the initial reaction specs, I guess, would be something to point out. Before I do that, I just want to make sure I shout out all of our $5 and up patron tiers that we have to shout out once a month. We have Jeff Morrison at the $50 tier. Thank you so much. Joyce EJ at $5. Anixia at the $20 tier. We have Inchy Donnelly at $5. Chris Palmer at $5. Zenith at $5. James Fazel at $5. And 2 at $20. Thank you guys so much for supporting the podcast. I really do appreciate it. If you guys want to support it, it is pinned in the comment section. If you're watching live, if you're listening digital, it'll be down in the description. If you happen, no pressure, if you happen to want to support the show. All right, get to the second part. This is the fun part. This is where I'm very curious what you guys have to say. We're starting with the screen because this has been a widely talked about thing this week, is the screen, because we actually got some details, not like exact, like, it's LCD,
Scream.
but then we don't know.
Scream. I was like, what?
Yeah.
What's
So,
Scream?
Andy Robinson from Video Game Chronicle said it is going to be an LCD screen instead of the OLED panel we have on the current top model of Switch. He did clarify on his podcast that he did have similar information for the Wii U gamepad back in the day when he was the first source on it having a touchscreen. But the tech used in the final model was different than the tech used in the dev kit at the time. I think he's noting that because the dev units might be LCD now, doesn't mean it'll be LCD at launch. I think he's just trying to put that out there as, hey, this is just what's available at the moment, et cetera, et cetera. He's just kind of putting it out there because a lot of negative reactions to it. Hey, maybe it will be OLED. But for right now, the dev units don't have OLED panels. However, Nate the Hate on his podcast said he not also heard that it will be LCD, which again, I presume he would hear from dev units, that it'll have a 8-inch screen. Now, if you have an OG Switch, that's going to sound massive because the OG Switch is 6.2 inches. If you have a Switch Lite, I don't even remember how small that one is. That's even smaller. It's like 5 something.
The OLED
is 7. So if you look at the OLED, it would be bigger than the current bezels on the OLED, but only slightly bigger. So if it is 8 inches, yeah, he's got the OG. If it is 8 inches, it would technically be a bigger system. It wouldn't be extremely bigger, but it also depends. If they still have bezels, then it would be quite a bit larger. If they go bezel-less, then it would only be a little bit larger. And I kept wondering, and I want to throw this to you guys out there. 8 inches is a lot. The 7 inches feels perfect. 8 inches. Look, I've heard that it's quite a bit to take 8. So my only thought I have on 8 inches, and I want to throw this to you guys, is the only reason I could think they would go with 8 inches and possibly even a close to bezel-less design would be so it stands out from everyone else. So when people see it, they know this is not the old Switch. This is a new Switch. That's one, because that's a one visual indicator. Dude, why is there no bezels on that thing? Oh, that's the new Switch. What are your guys' thoughts?
Well, first, I'll just I know within your verbiage it's indicated or implied, but I just want to say that, Nate the Hate was like, said it with like, I don't know, this is just what I heard, take it with a grain of salt kind of
by the way,
talk.
I want to address the Nate the Hate verbiage. I find it very weird because he's always because he puts it as a informed speculation. Then he goes, but this is what I've heard, and it's like, that's all you do, dude. All you do is talk about the things you've heard. That's not all he does, by the way. He talks about other stuff. But I'm saying when he's putting information out there and in his own thumbnail says what we know about Nintendo Switch 2. So it's weird that he says it, and I think he's tired of being quoted as this is a fact. But then he goes on to say, but this is what people are telling me. And then he notes that these people are developers. So it's like,
well, I mean, I guess it's one of the things, plans change, right?
Yeah, that I think that's the big thing is like, this is what it is now. It doesn't mean it's what it's going to be a year from now.
I think he knows the development kit they have and the people that are telling him the info that he knows, it might not be the final product. And I think he's giving himself somewhat of an out.
Yeah.
From, like, I'm not saying it's exactly what's going to ship, but this is what I'm hearing.
Basically, it's a rumor, but it's a rumor from his side based on real information.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah, it's a good rumor.
Yeah.
It's a very good rumor. Yeah, I mean, it could be a dev kit, right? Like, it could just be like they may just use larger screens for whatever reason. Like, that's possible, right? I like the idea of an 8-inch that softens the blow of it not being OLED, especially like to like just a casual eye. Like, you're like, oh, that's a bigger screen. That's better. Like, bigger is better. Like, it's easier to market 8-inch screen versus OLED 7-inch. You know what I mean? So,
And if it's 1080p.
That's my thought too.
That would be a big selling point. A 1080, the screen's bigger because we gave you 1080. Like, ooh.
Yeah, well, that's another thing, because when you account for pixel density, a 6.2-inch screen being 720p, is there really that much need to go 1080? But if you're at 8 inches,
that makes a difference.
It starts to make it starts to make more sense.
That's a selling point.
Yeah,
that could be.
I do like your thought process on how it could be a good way to help distinguish the Switch 2. I think that I'm excited about it. And if they do it where there's like basically no bezel, so it'll just be basic, like it's a screen. It's a screen with controllers attached to maybe have better ergonomic grips. We'll see. That's 100% speculation. There's no informed anything. That's just they should do that because it would be nice. But yeah, I mean, I love it. I think that if that's what they're doing, and it's cheaper than an OLED screen, do it. Do it.
So I have to say, we're asking questions. What would like the 8-inch screen size look like? Outside of the terrible controller design, go look at the Project Q, because it is a PS5 controller chopped in half on the sides of an 8-inch screen.
Yeah.
So that's what we would be looking at with the Switch, which would be okay. This is for me. I've always been very big on playing docked when possible. Even with the OLED literally bumped me to where I'm like, I can fully enjoy these games, but I want a little bit more size than what it is. I don't know why. I've always liked a screen to take up almost my entire field of vision. I've been that kid that sat way too close to the TV my whole life. I still like to have almost my entire field of vision taken up. If this is an 8-inch screen, and it differentiates itself from the Switch with a new form factor and new Joy-Cons, which Nintendo will want to sell us. They don't want to use the same Joy-Cons for the existing Nintendo Switch for this thing. It's the perfect way to do it. And while I'm not necessarily excited about the LCD over OLED, if that is indeed the case, I have definitely seen LCD screens that I'm like, wow, that's LCD. That looks awesome. So I'm not dismissing the fact that like it very well could be a heavily upgraded LCD screen to where it's hard to tell that it's not an OLED. I don't expect to get a Switch OG 2017 LCD display out of this thing. I think that the colors are going to be way more vibrant. The contrast will be awesome. But if you put it side to side to an OLED, you might not get like the true deep blacks like you can get with an OLED that you cannot get with an LCD screen because of the black light bleeding through. So I don't know. I'm kind of thinking that 8-inch screen would be the perfect. I mean, it is a lot, but it is. I think it's the perfect size to differentiate itself from the Switch and sell us new accessories for it, because everything's going to have to change if they did do that screen size increase. And I think that Nintendo runs a risk of maybe it looking too similar to the Switch if they don't do something like a screen size increase. So I'm all for it. If this report's true, this is actually one of the things that has me the most hyped for the potential of the next gen console.
Switch 3 is going to have a 10-inch screen.
Yeah, and this size, like you're looking at the Project Q, it's big, but also remember that's with bezels. If you go with a more bezel-less design, like it might not be too bad. Now it's hard to get direct comparisons because no one's had it. This is the leaked one, by the way, from the manufacturer, so no one's had it directly lined up next to an OLED. But I would imagine that screen might not look like if your OLED will fit inside it, but it might not look monstrous compared to the OLED tablet. Obviously, part of what makes this look monstrous is the fact they just split up a PS5 controller in half. But
yes,
but yeah, like this doesn't look too terrible if that was the screen size they went with. And I think I'm okay with that.
Small hand.
And honestly, I don't know that they need to go bigger than this. So like when they do an OLED update later, let's say they did, then they could just keep the same size and just have it be an OLED panel. It could still be the selling point, just wouldn't have a bigger screen.
Right.
And then, who knows? Maybe they decide, nope, we are going to just do a bigger screen, and then they're just All right, then let's go.
At that point, you're like, I know they call it
like 8 inches. I think is like the max I would like to see.
I agree. Yeah,
but I don't know. I don't think it can go bigger. Maybe
8 inches, no bezel is the perfect size.
Yeah, no bezel. That's the big thing. 8 inches, no bezel, 1080.
Yep,
like that.
1080.
That makes a lot of sense.
And I don't know if you guys disagree with me on this, but maybe I'm being cautiously optimistic, or maybe I'm being too optimistic rather with my viewpoint here. But even if it is LCD, I don't think we're going to be seeing it like an OG Switch LCD. Like, I don't know if you guys have seen LCD screens where you're like, yeah, that's actually close to an OLED. Like, I'm kind of picturing that.
I'm hoping it's like that.
Yeah, like I'm picturing that if Nintendo actually does go back to LCD, they're going to be well aware of that a large portion of their base knows what an OLED screen looks like in handheld mode. And I think they're going to pick at least something, hopefully, that's maybe more cost effective, but still looks real close to what we're getting on an OLED. And maybe the resolution, the pixel density, that might make up the difference, even though the
go
color
with at least a
contrast isn't there.
QLED.
Right, something like that.
I'd be okay with that.
Because I mean, Samsung
you still get your HDR, still get your variable refresh rate in, all the things that you'd want, and it would come in cheaper than an OLED screen. So, yeah.
I think it makes sense. It's going to be weird, especially if the system's backwards compatible, which is not guaranteed. I guess we'll talk about that at some point tonight.
Yeah,
but
that's coming up. Yep.
Yeah, but like, if it's backwards compatible, can you imagine having an OLED? You've played it. You've had OLED the last few years. You have Mario Kart Deluxe. You've been playing OLED all this time, and you take your favorite game, you put in your Switch 2, and you're like, "This looks worse." That's not a good look. So I think, and the thing is, side by side, it's a difference. It's a very noticeable difference. So I hope that LCD, to your point, Sunbro, is
I'm
close.
scared it's going to be a cheap one. Another Japan display.
It'll be a big mistake if it's noticeably.
And they just go, the Steam Deck also used a crappy one. Yeah, and it's the number one complaint about the system. And the problem isn't that it's a complaint. The problem is you can't have it look like a downgrade from this at 350.
That's the problem.
That's a problem. It might be more powerful, but like if all the colors are washed out and it just doesn't look good. Like I understand for dock play it won't matter, but man.
But
that's why
I still think there's a strong possibility that this is one. If there's anything out of all the info we've talked about so far about this maybe being something that could change during the dev kit process, it's probably the screen of the dev kits that they sent out.
Remember, all this information is related to the idea of it mass producing early next year, which means that this would not be production line models. These would just be dev line models. So. Yeah.
Do developers have to develop with OLED in mind?
Not necessarily.
There is an OLED dev kit.
But there is an OLED dev kit, yes. So it would be something that, while it might be a final spec to have an OLED screen, they might not get that final one until next year at some point.
Yeah.
Unless they just decide production line ones or dev kits like Xbox did.
Yeah. I'm going to say something that I might hate hearing me say, but it sounds like copium.
Yeah, it is.
I'm not saying 100%.
It totally is. To hope that it's hope. Maybe it's hopium because it's like, hey, we have an OLED screen, and we said this when the OLED screen came out. If you bring out an OLED screen, you can't go back. But they're going to go back. But that gets into the next point. Why are they going back? Because they might be giving us more storage. And this also comes from Nate Data. A couple of things. One, the cartridge use was confirmed by both. Like everyone's basically saying cartridges are back. Nate the Hate speculated that Macronix has a new technology coming out that can Nintendo might opt to use because you can keep a similar small size but put way more data in. So that doesn't mean they're going to be cheap. So that's all to remember. If you're using the latest technology, that just makes cartridges even more expensive. But whatever. In a time when Nintendo occasionally releases games and then gives you a physical version later, I guess they've only done it once. But
if games are $70,
twice now. It could become a habit. It's happened twice now.
I'm banking on the next September Direct seeing the same thing for Prime 2 Echoes.
I'm wondering if this is like, and this is how we offset costs because we already sold a bunch of digitals, so now we don't care what the cartridge costs. Anyways, but setting the cartridges aside, which I think most people assume they would still, if they had physical media, that was one thing we did. That is one thing that was nice. To confirmation, there's still going to be physical media, because that was never a for sure thing. When you got the Series S out there, you got the all digital PS4. You know, Nintendo's been talking about how their digital sales are creeping up and almost surpassing physical. Like you kind of always have in the back of your mind, God, are they going to go all digital? But no. So
at least one more generation.
At least one more generation. Hopefully more. But we have at least one more generation of physical, which also bodes well for potential physical backwards compatibility, which, again, a topic we'll get into in a little bit. But storage was brought up as the primary reason why they might go with an LCD, even a potential cheap, really shit tier one, to try to get costs down. If they can chop $20 off the price, they'll chop $20 off the price. And it would be because Nate the Hate has stated that he has heard that the system could contain up to 512 gigabytes of internal storage. And the reasoning, the reasoning is obviously, the dev kits have a lot of storage in them, which dev kit storage doesn't necessarily mean final spec storage, but there's clearly a lot of storage in the dev kits. But also, why would it need so much storage? Increasing game sizes, big thing to remember, that Microsoft Activision Blizzard deal is basically done, and Call of Duty on PlayStation 4 is over 100 gigabytes. That's on PlayStation 4, which is rumored to be right around where the specs of this thing will be, maybe a little better, which means a game like Call of Duty would probably be 100 plus gigabytes on this next system, which means you have to have the available internal storage to store at least one game of any size, in theory. That's the idea anyways. They would obviously probably keep the micro SD card slot. That wasn't actually confirmed, but most people would presume that would be kept to increase your storage.
If they go to something have had SD cards for years,
and if they go to proprietary, then they're just being greedy if they go to proprietary. But anyways, that seems to be the point, is that they're going to put a lot of storage on. Storage is not cheap. Now you might go micro SD card storage, but it's not. The storage in there isn't micro SD storage. It's a more expensive, faster storage medium, which is why games load slightly faster off the internal memory than SD cards. So the idea is that it could have 512. I think probably more realistically 256. Unless they got two models at launch, which, by the way, they've done that with Wii U. Didn't go so well for them, but they did it with Wii U. So maybe there's a two model launch with different sizes. I don't know. What are your guys' thoughts on storage? Because this is important.
I personally rather they just give me a micro SD card.
Just include one in the box.
I'd rather them include one in the box. Yeah. I don't care
internal
about
storage.
I know they're
beyond what they need for the operating system.
I know they're going to do that. I think the 512 thing is really unrealistic. I mean, it's in flash memory, pretty expensive like that. I doubt that. 256 maybe. I'm the pessimist in this regard. I think 128. And part of that's just because I just don't think you need that much when you have micro SD cards. I really don't. You can get micro SD cards pretty cheap. We could probably get a terabyte on a micro SD card by that. Yeah, it's a lot easier.
But do you want to be swapping micro SD cards? Because the reality is game sizes are going up. Sure, they're not going to get smaller. But you're going to fit less games. By the way,
the flash memory is not going to help.
I'm saying I already fill up a terabyte.
I understand that. 256 gigabytes, which is only 25% of that, isn't going to make that much of a difference.
Got to have enough to install any game.
I get that. So
that's why I'm like 128 might not be enough to install any game.
128 or 256. I have a strong doubt for the
256 is kind of where, if Nate the Hate sources are correct, I'm thinking, okay, they might put 512 in a dev unit, but 256 in the retail.
So how much do we know how much the Switch dev units had?
I don't.
Not off the top of my head, no. We did know. It's out there somewhere.
But Wii U had 32 gigabytes of flash memory. Switch has 32 gigabytes of flash memory.
They did.
I'm not saying Switch 2 will have 32 gigabytes.
Yeah, but you got to remember
the
Switch, while it's more powerful than a Wii U, it's not like a massive.
It's the same territory. What's crazy about it is
the game sizes didn't change much.
Yeah. Maybe because it's going to be about 4 times more powerful, it will have 4 times more flash.
Did we bring up that technically the Wii U had an 8 gigabyte version?
It did, the white version, and I wondered if
it's actually more rare and worth more money.
I wonder though. This is my 2 cents on this. Is like I do think the lowest Nintendo would maybe go on this new console will be 128, and I do think the highest they will go is 512. But what I'm thinking is from their perspective of knowing that they're going to start to go in more of a digital direction gradually. I think they're going to start looking at internal storage a little bit different, because whenever the Wii U was here with 8 and 32 gigabytes, they were still very much, I mean, it was all disk based. Even though, you know, you had the eShop on the Wii U, they knew that the mass majority of consumers were still buying physical. That is very much switched. Like, I always thought Nintendo will be the last company to go full on digital, but they will do it eventually. But I think we're seeing them tiptoe the waters with the digital day one releases and see how that goes, because
pay attention,
because we just shadow dropped a game and now there's all this hype and all these people playing it the same day as a direct. I think they love that. Not to mention they got to love that control.
They get more money.
Not to mention the game doesn't leak out 2 weeks early before its retail release, and they have to go on a strike fest for everybody that's dumping the footage online. I think that it's plausible to think that maybe they would put more of the cost of the unit into storage this time around, knowing that there's a fraction of, even though we all know about the micro SD card, the mom that buys the Switch for her kid might not know that, and he wants to play Call of Duty, and my Switch is already filled up. I think they keep it simple at Nintendo, so I could see them. 256 doesn't sound out of the realm of possibility. 512 seems very high, unless if they're doing a secondary model for it. But, you know, we're in this.
Yeah, maybe 512 is more like that's one of the OLED editions.
Right. I could definitely see that. We're in one of these weird transitional periods, though, where, you know, even if they have the cartridge slot, which they do, which is great news, and the cartridges can hold plenty, they don't want to push that. They want to push you to digital. Every company does as soon as possible. And so maybe storage is looked at a little bit different from them this time around.
That's a fantastic point. Like if you look from Nintendo's perspective, just the idea of being able to, if they can find ways to encourage people to buy digitally, that reduces on the leakage and also their you know, the cost, right? Because they have to cut out the middleman and all that. Like that, it makes a lot of sense. I say that real quick. I say that as somebody, it sucks for me because I bought Metroid Prime Remastered
I don't want it to happen
because I had to buy it day one to play it, and then I also had to go buy the cartridge. You know,
it's interesting. I'll tell you that if somehow, some way they come out day one with a 512, I will believe from the moment that is confirmed that this system is the last physical
system.
Yeah, it'll be the last one.
It feels trending that way too.
Yeah,
watching Nintendo's financials, like, just pay attention. We'll get all these sales numbers, but dig into the data and see if they show how many of them are digital. Sometimes they only do that at the end of the year, but like last year it was 50-50. And it's like, the scale's about to tip to more digital.
What if they do something a little differently, though? This might sound maybe a little counterintuitive. But ultimately, I think it's probably not going to happen. I'm just throwing out the idea. What if the dock has its own storage? What if it's like a hard drive or an SSD? And
I think they just need to support external drives on that thing.
Maybe so, right? And the problem with that is because it switches, and you don't no longer have access to the dock when you're portable. You don't have access to all that memory, right? So you would have to kind of pick what are your favorites to kind of stay on the system.
Well, that's like archiving games, yeah.
Yeah, but maybe it's like a faster.
Except they're instantly accessible when you dock. Yeah, like there's some game. There always is those games. You know what? I mostly play that docked, so that game can just stay on that storage. And then that's what external storage drives have been for the other systems for a long time. And if we can get external storage where we can just go out and buy like those super cheap 2 terabyte little thumbstick and just plug it in and run off that, sure, that's cool.
What would be great is if they pulled a Sony and made a detachable backplate where it maybe has a pull-out battery, and underneath that
install M.2 drives
where you can just throw in 2 terabytes day one. Let's go. That something like that would be excellent. But that doesn't.
Look, Nintendo, you want to solve the problem here? I will forgive you. You can do 128. I want 3 micro SD card slots on this bad boy. I don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear other devices proving it happens on my camera's got 2 slots. Let's go. I'll put terabytes on that thing then.
I can see it now. Hori has a new peripheral. It's a Switch 2 grip, right? You attach it. It offers more grip.
It gives you an extra SD card.
It gives you. I was gonna say it just gives you an extra 2 terabytes and battery.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah,
there you go.
All in one.
Don't even need to plug into the USB-C drive. You're good.
Nope.
Anyway, so that seems to be what the leaning point was towards the screen possibly being LCD, is that they had to cut costs somewhere because they're putting more expensive storage in. Cool. I mean, it honestly, a lot of us would be willing to probably spend $500 on a thing and get everything, all we want. But reality is, Nintendo knows they need to hit on a more consumer friendly price, which we'll get into a little bit later on what it's going to cost, because our last topic actually has price as the last point, but it starts first with the big question: backwards compatibility. So Andy Robinson reported that some third parties think if Switch 2 has backwards compatibility, it will hurt new game sales. That's one thing we can talk about, because that sounds like a greed move, which I understand, because backwards compatibility is totally pro-consumer. It's also possibly pro-Nintendo in shifting markets from one system to the next. But for third parties who maybe want to sell you repackaged games, it's they probably have the data. They have PlayStation 5 and Xbox doing it. They probably have the data that it kind of hurts sales because people will just play what they already own instead of buying the new thing. So that's one thing. By the way, that had nothing to do with if it's going to have it. That was just him saying that's what some third parties have told him, that for some reason they don't want backwards compatibility. Like, they're crossing their fingers that Nintendo doesn't put it in there. But his original report said he didn't know if there would be backwards compatibility, which some people found to be a red flag, because if you have a dev unit, why wouldn't you know? But he did clarify in a podcast he was on the same day that some did tell him it has backwards compatibility. The problem is others said it didn't. And he left it at that. Now, for clarification on that, on Nate the Hates podcast, Modern Vintage Gamer, who he is a game developer, he has a Switch dev unit, he makes games for Nintendo platforms and other platforms. He explained that it's not unusual for dev kits to not include all the features, including backwards compatibility, especially in very early models. And it is sometimes enabled later through a software update or just straight up in a new dev kit. And it could explain why some say it hasn't and others don't, because some dev kits are maybe newer, some are maybe older. If you're a closer developer to Nintendo, you might have more features in it than maybe ones out on the fringe. Like, say, I don't know, just as an example, maybe EA would have one that doesn't have it because they have just one of the first run of units, whereas like Capcom might have a newer dev kit that might have it. So it's sort of like, it's so early that it's not unusual for this not to be on the dev kit, basically. But the fact that Andy Robinson, I think, did an oopsie, because when he said that some said they haven't, some don't, he immediately stopped and he's like, shit, I shouldn't have said that. I'm like, so anyways, so backwards compatibility probably going to be a thing, and he wasn't supposed to say anything.
No, well. Yeah, if some have it, that means that eventually.
Yeah, if some have it, it's and he caught himself, and he literally said, "Oh shit!" And he never swears on the podcast, which means he's like, because I think he forgot he was on the podcast. Thought he was just talking to a fellow staff member. I think he forgot for a moment it was a podcast. So he basically confirmed we're going to get it, but he wasn't supposed to say it because it's like probably heavily protected and would really target who specifically he's getting the information from.
Right.
Oh boy. Anyways, that's not our problem. He let it slip out in a public podcast. So it is what it is. We're probably going to get it. So thoughts?
Well, I mean, go on. Go ahead. You go first.
I just, with the whole backwards compatibility and how it'll hurt new game sales, to me, that's just such a bitchy thing. The thing is we didn't hear this when the PlayStation 5 came out. We didn't hear this when the Xbox came out. Why are we hearing this as a Nintendo Switch thing? If it's backwards compatible, we didn't hear this for any of the other ones. What the hell? I mean, come on. It's just so stupid. They're probably right in it. It
Eric's
probably
going
does.
Off. I need a shot, man.
It probably does. They're not probably wrong, and it does hurt game sales. But at the same point in time, again, like I said, we didn't hear this for the other systems. What's so different about it being Nintendo versus the other systems that at least in my opinion, I don't think we ever heard anything about them bitching about backwards compatibility. I could be wrong. Maybe they did, but that's just kind of my 2 cents on the whole backwards compatibility thing. I want it for sure, but to have devs bitch about it, it's shut up. My God,
I love it. He's such a consumer. It's great.
Yeah,
I love it.
When I heard that, I was like, oh, that's Ubisoft. They're still mad. They're still upset
Right,
about Mario Rabbids.
They're upset about all their sales.
Yeah, we're trying to resell that game as a new game on a new platform. Damn it!
But Nintendo told you to hold off, and you didn't. So whose fault is that, really? But I mean, they told you anyway. Yeah, it's funny.
Look, Nintendo warned your asses. Come on. Anyways.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I'm not a PlayStation Xbox gamer usually, so just correct me if I'm not sure how backwards compatibility works on PS5 and Series, but is it like just straight?
Put the disc in and play
Both
or digital?
Okay,
it all just works.
Okay, yeah. So I mean, if that's the industry standard, and we have the Oopsie, and we have the fact that it has cartridges, right, and it's similar to the Switch. It has a portable and home console abilities. And historically speaking, whenever Nintendo is a very successful system, they usually follow it up.
And they have backwards compatibility, like one gen. That's they're usually a 1 gen back PC.
Honestly, excluding GameCube and Switch, every other system Nintendo's releases this
GameCube couldn't take cartridges.
Right.
And Switch couldn't take discs. So like there was an obvious reason why they didn't have PC. Yeah.
Right. So
honestly though, can we take devs bitching about this as that it is trending towards true?
Because they're like, damn it.
Because we don't want
it. Ubisoft over there like, we're working on this new game.
True because they're bitching about it.
Well, I think the thing about third-party devs, it's like the most, like Nintendo's not going to pay attention to that anyway, because they're already the company that does whatever they want, whenever they want. Yeah. And if Sony and Microsoft, who damn well depend on third-party devs way more than Nintendo, if they have it on their consoles, third-party devs are not stopping the backwards compatibility feature. If anything, complaints might be floating out there. Even MVG, who was kind of thinking it's going to be technically hard, has kind of changed his tune, probably because of what he's heard from Nate, thinking that no, it's probably happening, and Nintendo's going to solve for it. Where I think was his words exactly. It might they'll have to jump through hoops, but they're going to do it. They know the kind of evergreen library they have on the Switch, and they also know that they have games coming out towards the end of the life cycle that they want to sell. You tell me that they don't want to sell Super Mario Bros. Wonder and Super Mario RPG and the Peach game and the Luigi game all on the new gen Switch. Like they're going to want to do that. And then yes, it's consumer friendly, but it's also just putting them back into their, like to your guys' point, like their regular habit of going one console back. It made sense when the Wii U wasn't, we couldn't play Wii U games on the Switch because they went from disc to cartridge. How are you going to make that work? Mm-hmm. But outside of them having like a big form factor change or something massive changes in the console, they typically honor the most previous system.
Yeah.
So I don't think there's any reason not to expect backwards compatibility, and I will actually be shocked if we get this thing and there's no backwards compatibility, because when the billion pieces of software sold, they can say, well, we're good. We sold all of the software we want. But I don't think that that's how Furukawa looks at it at all. I think he looks at it like, how much further can these games go if we get into a bunch of new living rooms of people who are just now growing up and getting a Switch console for the first time? Or we have enough power and now we have Call of Duty on our platform. So how many PlayStation and Xbox gamers finally decide to pick one up? And then now they can go back and get Breath of the Wild all the way through Tears of the Kingdom, Smash Ultimate, and basically the whole... I mean, that's why it's the Switch's library is so beautiful, because you could be a day one Switch 2 buyer, and if it has backwards compatibility and you didn't own the first Switch for some reason, you have, I mean, how many hundreds and hundreds of hours of just masterpieces of games to go through. Mm-hmm. So I
potentially running at higher frame rates just for any of the games that are unlocked anyways. Yeah.
I would love to hear what their strategy is for patches and stuff like that, but I hope that they do it on as many as possible. Yeah. And if there's any kind of enhancement, even if they do the Sony move where they sell it to us for a $10 upgrade fee or something, like I would happily pay that for so many Switch games if they ran better.
Yeah, or it's free for expansion pack members.
Yep. Oh, there it is. That's how you get people on NSO.
Yeah. You got to figure it out.
Which is another
interesting too. Yeah, they bring NSO forward, like all the virtual console. Well, we say virtual console, but all those games over. It'll also be the first time Nintendo hasn't restarted. And that makes me very curious what they're going to do moving forward. Like, is this increase the possibility, if that came forward, that something like a GameCube could eventually come to NSO?
Yeah, only on Switch 2.
Yeah, it would only be on Switch 2. Yeah, it'd be only on Switch 2. Yeah,
probably maybe it has analog triggers.
That would be nice. I don't think it will.
I don't think it will, based on the ports right now without them. But you know,
I'll tell you. There's one other thing that kind of makes me feel confident about the backwards compatibility that I just thought of. It's the Pokemon situation, because you look at how the mainline Pokemon games, how they tend to be handled going into new generations on the handhelds. What happens is that first new Pokemon game is still for the prior system, but because every handheld has been backwards compatible, it will play the same Pokemon game and it will run better. So that's probably what they want to do this time around. It makes more sense to release it for Switch, but it's still playable on Switch 2, as opposed to releasing two separate versions or just having an exclusive without having the major Pokemon game for Switch 2. So, and that's a major thing. Pokemon's a huge deal, right? Like, it's not like this isn't Pikmin 4, this isn't Fire Emblem, this isn't Xenoblade, this isn't Metroid. This is Pokemon. Pokemon sells, worst case scenario, 10 million, probably 15, 20 plus.
Look at Scarlet and Violet. They're on such a trajectory right now. They dropped Legends in the beginning of the year, which was already like a killer game with 10 or whatever that sold. I don't know what it's at.
14.9, so 8 or something.
But it still got to 10 right away, and then it's at 14 plus now, right? And then you follow that up with Scarlet and Violet literally in the same year, and you have an even more record-breaking launch. Like, it's just that Nintendo's got all the cards in their favor if they play them right.
If you also count Brilliant Diamond Shining Pearl, within like a 13-month window, they sold like 40 million mainline Pokemon games.
So Game Freak and Pokemon Company had a good year, that's for sure.
So the point I'm making is, you look at that 40 million in 13 months. Yeah, Switch 2 is gonna be backwards compatible. They need that Pokemon game.
Pokemon Company has twisted their arm.
Right.
So that obviously all leads to, after all of this, which, by the way, we still don't know the most important thing are the specs. All speculative based on old NVIDIA leaks, but we weren't going to get into that today because none of that's new. That's all old. We'll have probably new on that soonish, just like we don't know anything about the controllers. Again, information I suspect we will start to get leaked out in the next few months. So, with what we do know, what is this thing going to cost?
Let me go real quick, and then I got to hop off after this because I got a hard stop at 10. Okay, I think they don't go any higher than $399.99. I know there's rumors $449. I think that Nintendo, I don't think that they want to sell at a loss, and they maybe will figure out a way. That's probably why we're going to be talking about an LCD screen. But I do think that they will make it work at $399.99. They don't go any higher than that, and I honestly don't see them launching two different models with one higher gigabyte variant either. Like, it's possible that the 512 would sell for $449, but I don't think they're going to do that. I think the one upgrade we may see them do, we may see a light model, which is a fairly safe bet later on, and then we probably will see an OLED model if this thing launches with an LCD screen, but I think it's $399 day one. So
okay,
that's my prediction.
Yeah.
And with that, guys, I appreciate you guys for having me tonight.
Yeah. So, go enjoy your movie, man.
Yes, I appreciate it. All right. Thanks, guys. See you.
See you, man.
Later. Guys, go check out Sunbro Nation. We got him linked down in the description. And just like that, it just naturally flows the three because we know what we're doing. We're almost a professional outfit around here. And Andres, you said you agree with the $399. Eric, what about you? What are you thinking price-wise?
Ooh. Cut the difference. $425.
$425.
Why not?
$424.99.
Yeah, right. Yeah, right.
$99. Oh man. Yeah. Oh man. So I did some research on this because $399 is like the big consensus that everyone thinks is going to be. You look at the OLED still selling incredibly well at $350. Something more powerful, more of this feels like $50 more is like a sweet spot. But I kept looking at Nintendo's history, and they have a really hard time launching systems at anything more than $300. They just really struggle at it. And I kept wondering, would they dare to come in at 300 when 300 is worth significantly less today than it was back when Switch launched? But then again, that's been true every system, and yet 300 seems to be the nice little sweet point, or less, 250 for the Wii. So I wonder if some of the reason we think the pricing will be what it is because Switch has never gotten a price drop. I do wonder if they plan to launch this thing again at $299 because that is mass market appeal at $299, and I think you risk at $399 of people going, but I can get a PS5, but I can get a Steam Deck, but I can get something else, and you're no longer the budget device on the market anymore. You can get an Xbox Series S. Like, part of what makes it appeal is that they're a budget device. And I know it seems insane to sell at that price because I don't think they can do it at a profit. But we also have a different president. And maybe he's thinking long term instead of short term because he's worried about that cliff. And if they sell this at $299, I think they will seriously have a device that could sell the sort of numbers that Switch sold.
Well,
yeah.
PS5 is $500. The digital version is $400, right? Is that still the case?
Yep. And it sounds like it might get a price drop even more.
Yeah, I mean, if Sony wants to actually compete with Nintendo, they're going to drop price to drop. That actually,
and that's already being rumored right now because a new version's coming out that they're going to drop prices.
Oh, you know what? Yeah. So there's no way Sony's going to do it for several reasons.
Sony's dropping prices. Is that?
Yeah. Man. So for the record, I agree. It's at most $399.99. I think it could be less, but my struggle is I don't see a scenario where they release a next generation system and it's anything less than $100 difference. Like it has to be at least $100 difference to me. Like otherwise it doesn't like just when you Nintendo. I think Nintendo communicates a lot by the prices they show on their games and their systems. Right when the price doesn't drop, what does that tell the consumer?
Premium product.
It's a premium product. It still sells. Switch keeping at 300 this entire time. It tells people, hey, this hasn't dropped price in 6 years. It's because it's worth it. Nintendo games, they don't drop in price. Why? Because it's worth it. So, it's tricky how they're going to go about doing things. I think eventually they need to have a price drop. But I know there's been inflation and supposedly pricing hasn't really gone that down for them. So it might even be hard for them to do a price drop. So it just really makes me wonder, like, if they can't even if it doesn't even financially make sense for them to do a price drop yet, like what is the price for a Switch 2 going to really cost? I'm going to assume we're going to see a price drop announced within the next year. In less than a year, we're gonna see all Switch SKUs drop at least $50. I think maybe a little more. I hope a little more. For your argument, like if we want to, see
I'm going extreme. I think it's launching $299. I was so on the $399 or even $349.
Yeah. What caused you to change your mind? Because looking at
Nintendo's history of failing to launch anything higher than that, and then also glancing at the exact comments of the current president, because I kept a lot of the stuff you look at the history, you look at this, oh, they might do this, they might do that. Oh, it's a different company, so they're going to go with this premium price. And I kept looking at words he kept bringing up in his first, handful of investors meetings where he said, every time we're successful, we're here and then we go like this. And I'm not going to let us. My number one goal is to be here and just stay here. And one thing that isn't talked about enough with Switch is how incredible the software sales are. We're probably about to find out that Tears of the Kingdom sold 20 million in less than 2 months. That's probably about to be announced within the next 10 hours. We're about to hear the incredible sales of all the other games last quarter and all the other games and the system. And I sat there and I realized with the incredible software sales Nintendo is getting, unlike any generation of system, a handheld, it don't matter. They've never seen software consistently sell at the levels that we're seeing on Switch. And that's why we keep talking about the Switch effect. And every IP is seeing its best-selling games happen on Switch. It's interesting because, which by the way, the only outlier at the moment I think is Gen 1 Pokemon. What a gangbuster that was back in the day. Just thinking about that still holding the number 1 sales spot despite the incredible Pokemon sales on Switch. It's insane. What an outlier. But when you look at it, I kept going, you know what? Maybe this president doesn't care as much about needing to profit off the hardware. And you go, oh, but they kept the Switch at the same price. Yeah, because it kept selling. You don't lower the price on something that's selling. That doesn't make any sense. Like, if you're still going to sell 15 million in year 7, why would you lower the price? You just throwing money away. There's no reason to do that. Keep making those high profit margins. But
the only reason why you would do that is if, again, the sales dropped way off. I mean, you drop
every time they dropped prices in the past, of course, was when sales weren't going well. Like when GameCube was selling for $100, it didn't launch at $100.
No,
it wasn't selling well, and they couldn't get rid of them. So I looked at it and I said, you know what? If he cares about staying here, then he needs to think beyond, hey, we need to profit on this system. No, we need to keep software sales up here. We need to keep hardware sales up here because hardware sales drive the software sales and the software sales drive the hardware sales. And you know what? In 2 years, it'll be profitable, the hardware itself. So what if we launch at a loss, keep our software sales incredibly high, especially since they'll still have some cross-gen games. I think there's going to be less than people want there to be, but I think there will be some, especially from third parties who don't want to abandon that really big audience. But Nintendo will have some. Any side-scrolling game, I think, will end up being on both and stuff like that. So while the 3D Mario might not be, and the next Mario Kart game might not be, there will be some. So they're going to keep some of the sales. And the way that they can get into the mass sales on the new exclusive games would be to have a system that's massively selling year 1, like Switch did, and it did it at $299 combined with software. And I think he's going to look at that as today more than ever, people don't got money. Sales are dipping in many categories. People don't have money. If we come in at $299 and then we chop a hundo off of all the other price tiers of the old Switch, we get the OLED down to $250. We get the OG down to $200. We get Lite down to $100. Those are now our budget tier systems that people can still buy and enjoy that incredible Switch library for 2-3 years, however long they still plan to even make and sell them. And then, hey, for what you just pay, actually for less, think about this selling point, for less than you bought a Switch OLED for last holiday, you can now get our brand new premium system. I think it's such a massive selling point that they would guarantee it would be another. If they bring the software and they hit that price, I think it's just a guarantee. We're looking at another 100 million plus selling system. And I think that's what just looking at his words, it feels like that's what Furukawa was talking about. We want to stay here. We don't want to drop and try to bounce back. We want to stay. And I just kind of feel like part of that means changing your mentality. If you start looking at price points of $399 and higher, $399 don't sound even nearly as enticing as $299.
Right. What do you think if they did like a $350 version with a pack in like 3D Mario or something along the lines of that?
Man, they haven't done pack-ins. I don't know if they'll do a pack-in.
No, I know, but
they've had the Mario Kart Deluxe.
If they do $299, there will be no pack-in.
Not at launch.
Right.
Yeah, not at launch.
Right. Not at launch.
And $299, there would be no chance of a pack-in.
No,
at $399, I mean, a demo, maybe.
Yeah.
They're 1-2 Switch.
Yeah.
They didn't do a demo for Switch. I don't know if they would like the Wii Sports thing.
Yeah, 1-2 Switch should have been packed.
It was such a new technology, it made sense to do that. If we're getting basically a sequel to Switch, then there's even less reason than there was for Switch.
I also love when I see comments. Some people like, oh, they wouldn't drop the Lite to $99. Well, I'm sorry, they actually went less than that with the 2DS and 3DS. They did it with the GameCube. Nintendo ain't afraid of a $100 price point. I don't think you understand that Lite makes them bank. I guarantee they might still even be making profits at $100.
I mean, I think the Lite probably should be selling more. I think the Lite's probably too expensive for what it is.
Yeah,
the Lite doesn't sell that well compared to the other versions. It's the worst selling version, right?
Yeah.
So
yeah, I mean, it probably should already have a price drop at this point,
right? Because I mean, if they get that night at $100 with the library that's on the Switch, it's incredible. Yeah. It's an incredible
and the biggest thing to remember, guys, hardware doesn't get more expensive to make over time. I know people think, oh, because of the pandemic. No. That was just not having enough manufacturing lines. That didn't mean that the components were factually more expensive to make. There just wasn't enough room to make more to meet demand for all of the various chip needs. Did some things fluctuate in price? Did some metal alloys go up? Sure. And you know what Nintendo did? Nintendo went ahead. People forget they stockpiled raw materials just last year. That was one of the big things that was talked about. Like, why are they stockpiling raw materials? Because they bought them at a price that was cheaper than what the market's selling. And they prepared for this. They knew what was going on. So my thing is, and by the way, every time Nintendo launches new hardware, the old system gets price cut. The only time it didn't happen was Wii U, but they weren't even making them anymore. So there was nothing to price cut. Like, what? We're price cut what exactly? We don't make it.
Yeah.
Nintendo always price cuts. And it's not always $50. So usually it's a big price cut because they want to encourage you to pick up the new thing while trying to sell all the stock of the old thing. But again, this is obviously on the presumption that it sells at $3.99. If it sells at $4.99, I could see it being a $50 price cut instead. But I just get this idea that $2.99 is just a sweet spot, man. Like everything they launch at that price seems to just do well. Look throughout Nintendo's history. And I just think that that's the spot, man. You're at the same price as the Xbox Series S, which is basically what the normal Switch is at. And you're arguably using even more modern hardware than the Xbox Series S. So I think it's just, if Nintendo's only care is that they stay on top, I can't argue $2.99. Don't keep them there. At $3.99, I think is just, man. You tell someone, you tell a kid to go tell their mom, I want a $400 electronic under my tree this holiday. Right. That isn't a phone that they can get on a phone plan and pay off over time. I don't know about you. I'm an adult and I tell my parents I want a $400 Christmas present, and they look at me and say, "Get wrecked, get a job." Like $400 is not a small chunk of change, even though relatively it won't pay for much. It'll still pay a bill. So but again, I'm the only person I know that has made this argument that it should be $2.99, and since I am the only one, I feel like I should make a video.
I like it. I like it.
I just feel like it's like, I don't know, Andres, what do you think? Am I just crazy?
A little.
Okay. Well,
yeah.
And it's gonna be hopium, but I think there's some logic there. Like,
yeah, I understand. Listen, I think you're making a compelling argument. I just think that it's not gonna happen.
Why?
Inflation.
Okay.
That's basically it.
They're about to sell more digital than anything.
$299.99 today. $300 today is not what $300 was.
I'm gonna look up exactly what it is.
Go ahead. So my point is that the deal Nintendo would be doing would be insane. And I also still think that an OLED the Switch OLED can't be $50 cheaper than a Switch 2. I just don't think that. So I think your logic is reasonable. I think Nintendo wants to have a competitive price point, which is why I think maybe $349.99 is conceivable, because that's where the OLED is right now. And the OLED's selling well, if Nintendo can get out their next gen system at the OLED price, that's a huge W. And that may still be at a loss.
Yeah, and I see that. The OLED price was what I was originally thinking, since it's their number one selling SKU. But then I kept thinking, yeah, but it might be their number one selling SKU, but they're still selling a lot of the other one, and even less of the Lite, but they're still selling enough that it registers. So it's like they have lower price models. And I think when you don't have the lower price models, do you really launch at $350? Set the precedent for $400, set the precedent for $300. And I know inflation means you're probably right? Like $299 back in 2017 is like $375 today. So like, you're not wrong that inflation plays a role, but also inflation's been here this whole time. And yet they charged only $50 more than the Wii back in 2006 at launch of Switch. And go ahead and look at what inflation went from 2006 to 2017. It was a hell of a lot more than $50. And yet they still launched at $299 because they knew it was a sweet spot to hit the mass market. And I just feel like, again, this is just a personal thing, because my thing to remember with this is it's a handheld. First and foremost, I know we call it hybrid. Comes with a dock. It's a handheld platform. Trying to sell someone a platform for more expensive. I mean, we have them out there. Look at Steam Deck, and Steam Deck sales ain't sniffing what Switch is doing. In fact, they were doing so poor. I know Steam Deck users don't want to think about this. During the Game Awards, they were just giving away thousands of them. You think a company that's selling well is just giving away thousands of anything? No, they did it because they were sitting on a shelf and they couldn't get rid of them. They overproduced after they were underproducing, and then no one was buying them and they couldn't get rid of them. So they did this deal with the Game Awards to just give them away. I just kind of think that price point, even with Steam Deck, it's just too expensive to hit the mass market. And where does that start? Right around $400. It feels like it's too expensive. And the problem, I think, is that, well, okay, you could do $299, but then the power jump wouldn't be as great, right? You would really cut back on the specs to get the price down. That would explain an LCD. You would only have 64 gigabytes of memory. You would, Andres Russo probably wouldn't even care that it's 64 gigabytes. He's putting a 1 terabyte drive in that thing day one. Probably putting a 1 terabyte in day one anyways. And like, you can cut back the specs and use, cheaper tech. And I get it. I just kind of feel like Nintendo isn't Steam Deck. Nintendo is a company that plans to sell 20 million of that new Mario game at launch. And they know a majority of those sales are going to be digital. And they make so much money off software, more money than they've ever made in the history of the company. That maybe just like Sony, the hardware money isn't that important at launch. What's more important is keeping market share. But again, this is the same argument, just framed a different way.
It'd be one of those things that you try to price it, that you take maybe a small hit on the hardware.
Could even be a big hit.
That you can,
if you make it back in 2 games sold.
Right. And that's what I'm saying. At the attach rate, it looks like it's about 8.25 games.
Yeah.
For Switch right now. If you can make it back in 2 games sold, 3 games sold, but I mean, whatever hit that you can maybe hopefully make up over time, as you start going, as the hardware becomes cheaper to manufacture as time goes on, because it's older.
And the yields get better on the chips. That's the big thing. The yields get better.
Then maybe, that hopefully crosses a line with, let's say, 2 years, then all of a sudden you're making money on your next gen. Then
there's also some things to consider. RAM prices have come down significantly from years ago. So despite inflation, RAM is cheaper than ever. So even though it might have more RAM, it might cost the same as the RAM did back then, but have more of it. Really, the big cost expensive part is whatever the heck they do with the controllers. If they go with an LCD screen, then that's no longer the expensive part. And then it's the chip inside. And it's really about the deal NVIDIA gives Nintendo. NVIDIA would basically be controlling how much this damn thing costs. Because if they're charging Nintendo, $200+ per system, per chip or whatever, with the motherboard, like, okay, yeah, that's a lot that Nintendo has to make up for. But what if that's not the cost? What if it's a really good deal because NVIDIA likes the idea that, hey, we're in the #1 game platform in the world sales-wise, and that is something we put on all of our marketing material to sell to other companies when we're selling other products, because guess what? NVIDIA is not in any of the other dedicated game devices. It's all AMD. It's all Ryzen. Switch is like their one cap. Now, again, this is hypothetical, but I'm just talking about when I've watched the investors meetings for NVIDIA, how high they bring up Switch like every investors meeting. Well, hey, #1 platform in the world is running NVIDIA technology for gaming. And it's like, yeah, from 2015, what are you bragging about? Yeah. Well, when you got 130 million of them out there, which is more than all the other platforms, well, yeah, you're gonna brag about it. So again, I'm probably crazy, and Andres' argument's not going to change. I'm insane. It's going to be $399, probably $349. It's all speculative, but man,
it'd be nice.
I feel a 2-minute video coming where I make this argument and I just drop it and I go, let me know what you think. And everyone says you're nuts.
No, I mean, yeah. Hey, it'll be great for freaking.
And I'll do it in 2 minutes. I promise.
Hey, man, I'll tell you this: if they did release for $300, it would sell a lot. But I also think Nintendo is going to make money. So,
so you think they wouldn't make money if they not on the system sold, but you don't think at launch they wouldn't make money?
I agree that if they released a system at $300, they would sell enough games to make up the difference rather quick. I totally agree with that. And I think they would do really well. I think they would put themselves in a position to sell maybe as well as the Switch. Probably not. But yeah, I think they would have a good chance to compete with it for a little bit.
Launch even higher than Switch.
I don't know if it'll sell even more than Switch.
Than Switches at launch. Like it'll have a higher
launch.
Oh,
at launch, I think that's almost guaranteed, actually, because I think people know what Switch is now. They had to kind of prove themselves when Switch came out. But I was thinking more like, trajectory long term. But I think that ultimately they're going to do what they think makes the most financial sense. And they're going to try and balance that, right? They're not going to just, like if they want to sell systems, they might as well just give it to us for free, right? They'll make a whole bunch of money on games.
Yeah,
right?
But I think at $2.99 it'll eventually be profitable. It's not like a number that won't be profitable for 5 years.
Nintendo's best selling current SKU is for $350.
Sure, but
they're not going to launch a next generation.
If they eliminate the SKUs below it, the Switch OLED doesn't make up the difference.
Yeah. I also don't think that
even look in Japan for all the OLEDs we talked, there's like 20 million $300 Switches.
Let me ask you this question.
Yeah.
Do you think there's a scenario where after these 6+ years of not dropping the price, that within the next year they drop the price of the OLED by $150?
150? No. 100? Yes.
Right. And because you don't feel that way, you cannot convince me that this is going to happen no matter what.
Why?
Because
how's $100 not enough?
Under no circumstance do I believe Nintendo's going to sell a next generation system just $50 more than their prior generation system. Under no circumstances. I don't believe that. I just don't believe that. I'm not going to. It's not going to happen. You have to make a really, I don't know what argument you have to make me entertain the idea, but it's just not going to happen. That said, I do agree with you that if they came out at $300, they would definitely sell a lot. But I think Nintendo's, money people are gonna be like, yeah, but we could get away with $349 or $400, so we're gonna do that. But I think another thing we gotta.
Because my argument is they can't get away with that price.
Well,
that's why
the other thing is we may be underestimating what this system is. It may bring the fire. Like we're kind of assuming that they're not going to be able to excite people enough to warrant the sales. If they can sell out of the stock,
that's not my argument.
Well, hypothetically speaking, right? You brought up earlier as a hypothetical that maybe they could sell like 10 million at launch or something like that.
Sure.
Right. Yeah. Let's say they do that. They get 10 million systems out there. Insane. If they can sell out 10 million Switches at launch for $400, they are going to do that.
I don't know that they can sell it at $400.
They sold Tears of the Kingdom. $70 game.
But a $10 increase is a lot different than a $50 increase from Switch OLED. And you might go, is it really? Is it really? It is, because now you're at the price of a PS5. Like I'm telling you, you got to avoid, and the PS5 price is only going to come down.
A digital PS5 that you can't take with you.
Sure. But then it might eventually be a $300 system you can bundle a Project U in with.
You know what I think is important to look at? PS5 sales versus PS5 normal versus PS5 digital. Like what's the sales discrepancy there?
I honestly don't know off the top of my head.
I think that's an important part. If you want to make the argument, you gotta look at those
because
numbers.
the argument isn't about which one sells better. The argument is that Nintendo sells best when they're the budget device on the market. And if you're at 400, you're no longer a budget device. That's my entire argument. And nothing you say is going to change the fact that $400, even with inflation, it ain't a budget because everything else is more expensive in the world.
How you look at the inflation numbers? How much have things been inflated by? What is $300 back in March 2017 today?
It's $375.
So, and you think so that
again, what is $250 back in 2006 to $300 in 2017?
But my point is, right? Would you say, or you're trying to say that Switch is a budget, $300 is a budget console?
It was. It's not a budget console at the moment. Right now, it's overpriced. But
sure, right.
But they created a market.
If you account for inflation, right? $349.99 would still be cheaper than what the Switch was, you know, and $400 is only marginally more expensive.
Yeah, but you're talking about inflation. That's not the way the market looks at it. The market, your general consumer ain't walking out there looking, oh man, let me consider inflation when I'm making this purchase.
No, they don't look at it like that. What they do is they're like, oh, that's how much that costs. And they kind of compare how other things have cost for them recently. They're not thinking back to 7 years ago. They're thinking about how much it impacts their wallet now versus how other things impact their wallet
So you think the impact is less just because of inflation?
I'm saying
$400 back then was a lot of money, and $400 today is still a lot of money.
I mean, technically, January 2006, $250 compared to January 2017, it's $306.15.
There you go. Cool. So, inflation wasn't that bad then. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, pandemic probably made the inflation skyrocket, but inflation, whatever.
Right.
But no, I hear what you're saying, Andres. I'm not really disagreeing with you. It's more so that I just think that $400, okay, correction, $399, because obviously it always looks better to say $399.
We all know what you mean.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
well, it's a price point that a lot of people scoff at for a handheld. We got to call this thing what it is. It's not a box you put under your TV. It's a handheld that has a dock. And it's just a lot of money. And I know the OLED's the best selling SKU. Yeah, the OLED's the best selling SKU in the twilight years of the Switch when it's selling its worst numbers. What are we talking about? We're talking about, this is the best selling SKU. Yeah, it's the best selling SKU as they're declining in sales every single year.
I got the sales here.
Their best sales years was 2020. They sold 28 million.
2021, it looks like.
Well, that's when OLED came out.
Global sell through.
Oh yeah, that's the OLED sales. Yeah, no, they peaked with total Switch sales in 2020.
This is Switch and Switch Lite.
That's fiscal year. That's fiscal year. That's the fiscal year ending in 2021. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
so
that's
fiscal year 23. Nintendo has sold 9.22 million of the OLED, 6.14 of the regular, and 2.62.
Yeah, that's last year. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, that's through March of this year.
Yep. So.
Yes,
I mean,
I'm not arguing that
OLED has outsold both of the other ones combined this year.
Yes, of course it has. It's the newest release version of the Switch. Mm-hmm. My argument isn't that. My argument is it's the number one seller while the Switch is actually selling less and less every single year.
Oh, yeah.
28 million, 25 million, 20 million, now 15 million. It's declining. I don't really care that it's the number one seller on a declining system. I care about how the hell did they get to 28 million in the first place? Pandemic, yes. But even before that, they were at like 19 million in 2019 or something like that. How did they start getting up to those numbers? It wasn't with a $350 system. It was with a $300 system. And I just look at $400 and I go, nothing else handheld-wise is selling well at $400. So what makes Nintendo think theirs would?
The Switch effect.
I get that it sounds like a deal compared to $350 for an OLED, but that's only a deal if the OLED price isn't dropped. Mm-hmm. If the OLED price is dropped, it doesn't really feel like that big of a deal because the bigger the price gap, the more expensive it just looks like it is. Now, if they don't price drop, $399 is great. And maybe they never do. Maybe they just never price drop the Switch. They just let it die out by stop making it. And they just let whatever is on the market sell. And when it sells, they're done. They're done. It is what it is because they technically, I think, over time would sell out of whatever they made if they just stop making it and keep it at the price it's at. Because when you stop making it, there's no point to lower the price then. Because when you stop making it, for those who don't know how sales work for Nintendo, it's not about what sells at retail. It's about what the retail orders from them. So the moment they get a purchase order in and Nintendo ships it to retail, that's already a sale for them. That already counts. Mm-hmm. That's how that's why.
Well, yeah, because Nintendo's already got their money for it.
Yeah. And then Nintendo already made their money.
You pay the retailer, and that's when the sale happens for the retailer. It's
not, the retailer doesn't make any money on it until they sell it, and there's a certain part of that. So, like when Nintendo's selling, a Switch OLED at $349, that's not what they're charging the retailer. Mm-hmm. Let's say the retailer charged $300, so the profit margin for the retailer is $50. Mm-hmm. And by the way, it's usually smaller than that. It's usually more like a $10 to $20 profit margin on consoles. The software margins are also like $10, $20, but also that's a much bigger percentage of the game. That's why everyone loves digital. because you make 100%, especially when you're the platform holder. Nintendo just makes all the money when you buy digital at $70. Anyways, so
I wonder how like digital codes work from buying like from a store.
Yeah,
I'm sure
I don't know.
sure
I don't know
a
how
cut
that
of
works.
but
Yeah, I have no idea how digital code works.
So I looked up the hardware sales in Japan, right, for just systems, right, and this is a recent. This is from the Famitsu sales
like last week or whatever.
Yeah, right. And Switch OLED model has been selling the best there
for since 2021. Since it launched.
Now PlayStation 5 is currently the second best-selling system in Japan. And lifetime it's at 3.4 something million, and the digital version is at 500,000. So it's a substantial difference.
It is.
Right. And so my point early, and just a piece to your argument, right? You were talking about how like people will say, oh, but for $400 you get a PS5. Not the good PS5, right? Not the PS5 that people really want. A small number of people were buying a PS5 digital edition. Sure. So, I'm not so sure that the point of hitting $400 is going to really affect the perceived value of the Switch versus the competition when most people aren't buying that $400 version.
Sure. And that's why I brought up things like the Steam Deck and other stuff.
That said, though, right? You could also argue that at $400, they might as well just buy the better version, right? They might as well buy if you're maybe $400 is already considered premium price tag, so you might as well just
go all out,
right?
Put the 512 out there, give the OLED panel, screw it, charge $450 or whatever, and just give us what we really want. Again,
anyways,
this is all speculation. None of us know. There's not even a leaked, rumored price point at this point.
No,
I was just looking back at Furukawa's words about wanting to stay up here, and I kept thinking, is $400 going to keep you up here just because you have the software? And I just don't know that parents, and I have parents, and I am a parent, are going to look at $400. I'll tell you right now, my kids' only reason they own a Switch is because I bought them lights.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not gonna, and I understand light's the worst selling thing, and there will be a light version of this later. But I'm also thinking if this thing's if this thing's $400, the light version is going to be $300. I ain't buying my kids a $300 electronic. That ain't a kid-friendly price.
No.
On something that they're going to break. Like, that's just not a kid-friendly. So I kept playing, like, I got to think of the whole stack, and I'm like, man, I think the Switch stack is almost perfect where it is at 200, 300, 350. Why don't we just repeat this another generation? And you'd come out as the budget price, maybe because of inflation. You'd come out as a budget device that offers really amazing gaming capability. And you're just selling like crazy. And next thing you know, you have another 130, 140 million seller in your hands. Like I just look at that falling off the cliff comment. I take it literally and I go, what's the number one way to not fall off the cliff? Stay number one. By the way, it might sell just fine at 400, and I might be like, here's the thing, I'm gonna buy it at 400. I don't know anybody here that would like Eric. Would you buy the Switch 2 at 400? A new Mario game, day one. Yeah, buy it for 400. But we're also all adults with disposable income. I don't know that a huge chunk of the Switch's audience is necessarily like, I just have $400 laying around to buy a system. Yeah, and $100 could make a difference because guess what? Games are getting more expensive. So now when you buy that system and it doesn't come with a game, you got to buy a $70 game on top because that's what Mario is going to cost. And now you're spending almost $400 just to have a system with a game.
So here's something else to consider. I think it makes more sense to start high and then go low if you need to. Starting at 300 at a loss, right? It's bad to come out at the wrong price and not sell enough. But it's worse to sell at a price that you didn't need to go and lose out on all that potential money because you can't go back up. You can only go down.
Sure.
And I think...
But why would you regret selling 20 plus million units every year right out the gate?
Because what if you could sell 20 million plus units and make an additional $100 per unit?
Because that's not how it works. Every time things are more expensive, you have to subtract sales.
Put it this way. If Nintendo, it goes back to what I said earlier. If Nintendo believes that they can sell 10 million at launch and sell it out, then there's no reason.
Launch. When you're pricing long haul, it ain't just about launch.
Well, I understand what you're saying, but my point is, if they can sell out at launch for $400, then they should sell it at $400. If for whatever reason the sales trickle down so much that they need to price drop, then they'll do a price drop. Most systems have price drops.
Last time they did that led to their worst selling handheld of all time. The 3DS was overpriced at launch. They price dropped. 3DS is their worst selling handheld of all time.
I think last I
by the way,
was around 75 million.
This is not which is their worst selling handheld of all time when you go look at the sales. But by the way, this does not mean 3DS was a failure, guys. It's a common misconception when I bring this up that it's a failure. But I would say, if Switch 2 sells 75 million, it's probably a failure compared to the previous system. 3DS sold half of what DS did. Yeah, I don't think Nintendo looks at that as a success. I think if they thought if they would have launched it at the price that it started to sell at launch, maybe it would have been an 80, 90, 100 million seller.
You say 3DS is considered a failure, but does Nintendo consider it a failure?
You don't think
there's a lot of games on that system?
Sure, but you don't think selling half as much as the
3DS
previous
is what kept Nintendo afloat during the Wii U era. It wasn't the
and
Wii
yet
U.
They still lost money 2 years in a row. Despite
it was
that.
a tough time.
3DS also was not doing very well for a couple of years. I think people forget the 3DS didn't take off until like year 3.
Listen, Nate, you know, I know, Eric knows, everyone in the chat knows, it ain't gonna be at $300. But I don't know. But
I think it's gonna be. I legitimately think it's gonna be 300. Like, this is a real thing. That's why I'm so passionate about it. I honestly think they're launching at $299.
I want you to go to Nintendo and make the same argument to them.
I don't have to make it to them
because you're gonna be saving me money. You're gonna be saving everyone money.
I don't think I have to make it to them. I think they already know you were selling it at 300. I think that's been their goal this whole time.
I will remember this conversation.
You better.
And if this happens, I will be like, "Yep, you said it. No one believed you." But you said it.
And I gotta drop a video just to
victory lap.
I gotta drop a video just to reaffirm it. Which, by the way, no one should get mad at the video because everybody should want it to be 3. Okay, right. To be clear, this is the most consumer friendly thing ever. Everyone should want this thing to be $299. So no one should get angry at the video. I just expect everyone to disagree with the video. And I've been watching the chat during our live portion of the podcast, and everyone disagrees with me. They all think I'm insane. They think 350 is the absolute lowest it could ever launch at. And I totally understand all of the reasoning because I was right there with you. And Andres knows that. And calling 350, 399 this entire time. And then it was just me going back and watching his arguments about the cliff and realizing Nintendo has a different priority. They care about not falling off the cliff more than they care about anything else right now. And so doing 3DS sales where you sell at a higher price at launch and then you cut the price because the trickle-down sales don't continue and then you end up selling half as much as your previous system ain't something Nintendo's interested in.
Yeah,
they're interested in, hey, how did we get here? $300 device, killer software. Cool. Let's do it again.
Yeah, I'll say this, though. I've also been down this road before. When it comes to new Nintendo systems, like, oh, well, maybe they'll come out at a really competitive price, and I'm always a little disappointed.
Are you?
Yeah,
like they're too high or too low?
Like it's never so low that I'm like, oh yeah, they're gonna hit it out of the park.
You know? So what do you think when they announced the Switch price? I mean, by the way, I wasn't making YouTube content back then, so
I think the Switch one was like, okay, that's good enough.
Seems good enough, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I don't.
So it was what? It was same price as Wii U. Wait, was Wii U 200, 250 or no? That was
Wii U released at 350.
Yeah, 350 for the top model, 300 for the 8 gig.
So that was actually a big W that they managed to release $50 cheaper than the correct model. Than the correct Wii U model. Yeah.
Than the correct model. Oh man, all you white Wii U owners out there, I'm so sorry.
Which is a whole other thing. In 2012, they released a home console for $350. If Nintendo releases a Switch 2 for $350 in
they also had a $300 version.
Yeah, that doesn't count. We all know it doesn't count. Like it doesn't. Yeah, it's 8 gigabytes.
The Wii U doesn't count. It only sold 13 million. What are we talking about?
There's that
Right.
too.
But Nintendo
The
had high
350
hopes.
price clearly didn't work either.
Nintendo had high hopes.
And they were wrong.
And they were wrong. But they still sold it for $350.
That was the problem with them. They had high hopes with the Wii U and the 3DS, and both were doing bad at the same time.
And it came with Nintendo Land.
Hey, that's a good game.
Yeah.
It was cracked in.
Yeah.
That was a good game. That was a good game.
Yeah.
Way underrated. But of course, you can say anything on Wii U is underrated because nobody played it. So, and by the way, I know 13 million is a lot of people. I'd love to have 13 million subscribers. But for console sales, that's pretty bad. There's a reason they lost money. It's pretty bad. It's really expensive to make video games, guys. If you only got a 13 million install base, it's not good. It's not good.
Hold on, I'm checking this out.
What are you checking out?
This is going to be interesting.
What are you doing? Are you doing 2012 to today?
Hold on. Yep.
We really should be looking at today, I guess, because today, what would it be today?
That's what I'm getting.
A Wii U back then?
Yeah. Oh, come on. Seriously? What are we? June. Fine. June.
Sure.
Come on. Okay. So if the Wii U was priced out today at the original play, it'd be $463.85 at $350 in 2012. With inflation, it'd be $463.85.
And yet the Switch came in cheaper than the Wii U's top model, which became the only model eventually.
So what's interesting, though, is that if the Switch 2 comes out in 2024, and we assume inflation will continue to rise by that point, at $400, it would still be a better value. It would still be a cheaper.
Equal. It might be equal value.
463 versus 400, right?
Well, that's still the Wii U, but I mean, compared to the Switch back in 2017,
my point simply is that like $400 in 2024 is it's gonna be a much better deal than what the Wii U was.
Yeah,
a much better deal. So,
yeah, but why are we bringing up the Wii U? It doesn't matter. Why are we bringing up a failed system? I can bring up we talk about the $100 GameCube back in the day or something. I don't know. Like, what are we talking about? Why are we comparing a system nobody bought?
Another thing, right? What's the rate of inflation going up year by year? Can we predict what it'll be towards the second half of 2024?
It's been really crazy the last couple of years post pandemic, but whether or not that crazy rate's going to continue, that's
sure,
I don't know.
Right? But
a lot of markets crashed because of the pandemic.
But if it goes up again, right, that $25 difference we brought up earlier.
You know what? It's an election year next year. It's probably going to go down.
Oh, we hope.
It's an election year. They got to get votes. It'll probably go down. I'm sorry. Suddenly things always seem to become cheaper on an election year for some reason.
Right.
Wow. Who knew? Almost like we need brownie points for votes. So I kind of feel like it might not change at all. It might just stay the same next year.
Yeah, it'd be a $25 difference if it came out.
If it came out this year.
$400.
Yeah, it'd be $25 more expensive. Right?
Yeah.
Because it'd be $375. Yeah. So I don't know. Again, I'm probably wrong. As is probably everyone. We're probably all wrong. It's probably going to come out at some price point that none of us have predicted.
$329.99.
Yeah, like some weird price like that, or they're like, look, it's cheaper than OLED. Buy it today, and like, oh yeah, that's a good deal.
It's actually going to be a monthly subscription plan.
Now watch it's an OLED TV with controller slapped to the side of it. And it's $3,000,
and it's going to end up being the premium of premium devices. Oh, up to 512. No, it's got a full terabyte in there. By the way, it's running with 6 teraflops of performance. You guys are wrong. We went with a thick boy and put an actual cooler in the thing. And we're charging $500.
Mini fridge.
Yeah, the mini fridge.
Yeah.
And we're charging $500 for this thing. Oh, we know you can get a PS5, but can your PS5 do this? I don't think so. Even though what I'm holding is like this, like my whole laptop. Can your PS5 do this?
Yeah, right. It's a freaking brick, just a
8-inch screen. It's a 12-inch screen.
It's a Roadcaster.
That's the other thing. I mean, if the screen's 8 inches, like if it has extra internal storage, we really think they're going for $299.
Well, as I said, some things have gotten cheaper. I don't know if storage is necessarily gotten. Wow.
And if they're going to use a more expensive
cartridges, have come down in price, but I don't know if the flash storage has come down in price. I'd have to look. But here's the weird thing: some things are coming down in price while inflation's going up, which it makes no sense.
I think it's reasonable to think that if Nintendo wants to reach the mass market, that's why they price drop the Switch.
But price drop in your last generation system is not going to do much for you. Well, I'll ask you this. Let me look up something quick. Has the PlayStation 4 been price dropped?
I don't know.
I'm going like Walmart right now. Although Walmart might not be the best to look. Probably should look at a GameStop, which always shows MSRP.
Original PS4.
Not price. Used, not refurbished. PlayStation 4 Slim is $300. Did it launch at $300? Because the PlayStation 4 Slim is the only one I'm seeing available new. PlayStation 4 Slim launch price. Where it launch at? Yeah, PlayStation 4 Slim still $300 and it launched at $300. So I mean, there's not even a guarantee Nintendo drops prices.
So PS4, sold at $400.
Yeah, and then they replaced it with a Slim model later for $299. So they priced it price dropped in generation. Sony does it every time. By the way, they always price drop in generation. Nintendo's with the weird company that never does that. But I'm kind of pointing out that like I don't know if they're going to price drop this damn thing, because all their price drops have always been related to things aren't selling. We need to sell.
I mean, which supports my argument of OLED coming out $349.99. I mean, Switch 2 coming out $349.99.
Or they just stop making Switches altogether when they drop it. Switch is discontinued. You must buy the new one, and everyone's like, "What?" But the new one's only $299. Actually, yeah. Why would I want to buy the old one when the new one costs what the old one costs?
Yeah, I don't know. I think we're going in circles.
I know we are, but it's fun conversation.
It is.
At least it is to me. Andres is over there like, dude, I've been podcasting for like 17 hours in a row.
Right.
All right, guys, we're gonna call it there. Thank you, guys, so much for being here. Andres, you want to tell them what you got going on and where they can find you?
Well, I'm working on this Zelda Theory video. I put out a short right before I started doing this podcast marathon, and apparently it's getting mass dislikes, and I'm not sure why.
Ooh, yeah, I can't see the dislikes, so
yeah,
I'm holding your short right now.
I don't know what I did wrong. I mean, the thing is, just when it comes to Zelda Theories,
got 141 likes. What's the dislike?
You can only put it this way: I never see anything in the 80% like to dislike ratio range, and it's in that range.
No, all my shorts are in that range.
So, well, that makes me feel a little better. But
yeah, they're all in that range, and they have they don't. I don't know. I have to release a new short.
I just don't. I think people are mad because I didn't include every single detail. Well, guess what? That short is like 59.9 seconds. I cut out content. Like, it's impossible.
Oh, is that what they're mad about?
It's impossible. Well, I talked about the dragons, and I talked about how it seems like they are from the Zonai. Because I mean, I can
sure, yeah,
right. But people are like, "Oh, that's not true. They are the three servants of the spring," which I did say, right? But they were, they work for the goddess, right? Like, I didn't talk about that stuff. Well, I couldn't. There was 60 seconds. It was just about maybe I should change the title. It's the origin of the dragons in Tears of the Kingdom.
I think if you had a bigger video on this and this was like a short summary, but for more information, check out the video, they might be less mad because then they'd be like, "Oh, he couldn't get it all in. He's got a bigger video on it. Let me go watch that."
There is a bigger video coming out tomorrow, and the point will come up.
Or you try on one of those, let me talk about now, and then the big videos. I see what you were doing. Yeah, got to mess with it a little bit. I know. I just got to get shorts up in general. I just need to get something up. Even if it's not my fun little fact things. I think the fact things don't work anymore, which is fine. It's going to find something else. I'll find something that works.
The short is doing well in terms of views.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know what it has on your end. But.
Just apparently convincing people that I'm an idiot. So.
Did you lose subscribers on it? That's the question. I usually have a very good subscriber turnout on shorts. Even like once they get like 1,000 views, will gain me like 30 subs.
Fantastic question. It's been out for less than 3 hours, so I don't know how much... Well, it says +1 subscriber, so I don't know what that means.
Well, not bad for a dislike bomb.
Yeah, right.
Huh? It could mean that a lot of people unsubscribe.
Yeah, without
some games.
Still interactions. So,
well, people watch shorts on their phone, and like chances are they're not clicking on your channel to unsubscribe. They just hit the button that's right there to do it.
The interesting thing, I don't know.
Who knows?
Whatever.
You give it some time. All right, so go check it out. He's got a big video dropping tomorrow. Go check it out. It's going to be awesome. Hopefully. Again, he wasted all his time podcasting today. Otherwise, the video might be done. Who the hell knows?
Yeah.
Eric, just welcome back, man.
Yeah, right.
Haven't seen you in 2 weeks.
Right. God, I don't even know what week it is, what day it is, what anything right now, because I feel like I haven't been here. It's been so sporadic, and it's been
honestly, like the last 2 months, what have you been on? 3 episodes?
Yeah, something like that. It's been like almost
you're actually just a straight up guest at this point.
Yeah, it's almost every other week right now at this point. Good God.
That's how it goes. That's how it goes. Hopefully it's not that way when Switch 2 comes out.
Yeah, right. Right.
And I'm obviously Nathaniel Robojans from Nintendo Prime. If you don't know, Andres and I like to go back and forth sometimes. It's good fun.
And I'm
I like my counterpoint. Although this time I actually do believe in my $2.99 price, but I'm not just saying it to razzle people. I actually was already thinking this for the show today. Like I was already like, dude, I'm locked in.
I hope you're right.
I was hoping we could have got to it with some bro able to react to it too. But
I do truly hope you're right. I don't think
anyone hopes I'm wrong.
Right.
Huh?
If people hope I'm wrong, then they must just really hate me. Because why would you want to spend more money on something? You know?
Yeah.
Because I want to give Nintendo everything I have.
Yeah. I want to personally fund Miyamoto's paycheck. Don't worry about it.
Take my money.
Take my money. All right, guys. We'll be back again next week. Hopefully with Eric.
At this point, yes, I will be here.
But yeah, this little 3-pack we've got next week. We'll have some new guests. It's going to be a lot of fun. We'll catch you guys later. Bye.
Peace.
See ya.